Yeah, in this session, I'm going to talk about A.K. Ramanujan's poetry, and later on, I move on to Great Expectations. Since due to technical errors in the morning session, some students they messaged me and they put a comments on their in the chat box saying that they were not able to hear what I was teaching. So let me repeat a few important concepts or themes in this session, but after my assigned or scheduled topic. And in this session, I'm going to talk about A.K. Ramanujan's poetry. Hope I'm audible enough. And if you are not able to listen to me, please drop me a message in the chat box. Okay, let me start with V.K. Ramanujan's poetry. And in my yesterday's session, I had given you a brief introduction regarding Indian writing in English and A.K. Ramanujan, Kamala Das, Sarojini Naidu, all all these literary gigantic figures. They belong to post colonial era. Okay, that post independent era. Especially in this session, I'm going to talk about a particular poem described for your study. The title of the poem is Small Scale Reflections on a Great House, which is written by A.K. Ramanujan. Okay, not Ramanujam, he's a mathematician, but A.K. Ramanujan. So this poem by A.K. Ramanujan is an incredible poem that uses a house. The title itself tells us that maybe he is what recalling the memories he had with a great house and the connections or the bond what the poet had with a great house. And let us see what is the great house or he is going to talk about. And this is an incredible poem, very beautiful poem that uses house and all the objects and memories, happy and sad, and with a nostalgic tone we have in this nostalgia. He is recalling those beautiful memories when he was small. And this poem contains to speak about a family's personal history and the people who live there, objects who live there, and even memories on those great houses. These are the things the poet wanted to discuss or portray in this poem. And the language is very simple, and simple language has been used in this poem. A very beautiful poem. You have to go through this poem, and I'll read out some important lines in my lecture. Small scale reflections on a great house. It is a 91 line poem. Okay, it's a big, quite lengthy poem that is divided into two or three or four lines, and each stanza contains sometimes one stanza it contains three lines, and the next immediate stanza four lines. So as well as single and solitary lines of verse. The poem is written in pre-verse. Yesterday I gave you an introduction, a brief introduction regarding pre-verse, blank verse like that. So this means that there is no rhyme scheme at all. Pre-verse means freestyle writing. So this means that there is no rhyme scheme at all or metrical pattern to the lines. So he has used a pre-verse style. In fact, if there was the poem, which would make a lot less sense. And the chaotic nature of the images and their associations are a very integral part of the story. And when you start reading this poem, you could understand that maybe this is somewhat like a story. And if they were to be structured or rhymed, they would have a lot less of an impact. And you start enjoying once you start reading this poem. And am I audible? Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to see you all. Yeah, and let me continue. And I hope all of you have understood the topic what I am going to talk about. The A.K. Ramanujan's poems. And in my previous class, I had given you a brief introduction regarding Indian writing in English. So let me continue with A.K. Ramanujan, since he belongs to post-independent era Indian context. So he is also one of the giant in Indian writing in English after Sarojini Naidu. Yeah. If you have any doubts in between, you can drop me a message as I have told you. Yeah, let me go back to my poem. And the title of the poem itself suggests us that how important our reflection sometimes, and even we do have our reflections or memories of our great grandmothers, or how we used to go or visit our places when we were small. And when you start working, I hope you all agree with me, we don't have time to speak to our siblings sometimes, right? So when we start reading this poem, definitely we all start self introspecting, okay, ourselves. So this is a wonderful poem by A.K. Ramanujan, which speaks about history through an image rich narrative about a family. Got it? And somewhat like A.K. Ramanujan is a well-known poet in portraying the caricatures and the characters in a comical way. And even the poem, though we have a tone of a nostalgia, or the tone of a poet is somewhat pathetic tone, but still we start enjoying each and every word which has been used by the poet to describe or to tell us the story. So the poem begins with the speaker telling the reader that everything that comes into that great grand house, okay, and which always stays there and which never went back. So, or if it leaves, or the things, or the people, or the animals, once they get into that house, they never moved away. It eventually comes back again like that. So as soon as it becomes clear the speaker really does mean everything, some of the many small scale reflections or small things on his list are cows, okay, then songs, then beggar songs, white soldiers, books, photographs, and clothes, so on, so many things. These are all considered as very minute petty issues, but out of all these small silly things, he has made up a wonderful poem, and he had a knack of pulling the attention of the readers, or okay. And once you go through it, definitely you know how what I meant. And some of the most important things that come into the house and stay there are beliefs, the mutual trust they had among themselves. And in one particular example, the speaker describes how the women are made to follow traditional gender roles. Okay, and in another, how a neighbor brought a dish of sweets, okay, for a god's wedding anniversary or some other celebration at their home. Towards the end of the poem, the example take a darker turn. The speaker starts to talk about war and the men in the family who have gone off to fight. They return to home as dead corpse. Okay, then dead men, sorry, corpse. One man went as far as the Sahara but came back not by desert foxes like that. So this seems like quite a depressing thing which had happened to that family, because everything had happened, or what the poet tries to say or speak is nothing but on the poor things or the people who belong to this great grand house, okay, the great house. So towards as we feel when we start reading this poem, this seems like quite a depressing thing to have happened. But the second man, the speaker mentions that they came back in like cars, and he died while fighting on the border and had a complicated route back to the house. Despite the distance, he did not come home. And this is the main theme of the poem, that nothing is meaningless in the family. And everything, every small issues, and this particular poet, he gives he pays attention to every minute things, which we feel that it's all silly things, and all its quirks, bits of trivia, and important history belong to the home and cannot be separated from future generations. And let us know what are the literary devices or poetic techniques he has used in this poem. Though this poem uses, or it contains simple language, and simple things, the literary techniques Ramanujan has used is quite different from others, from his contemporaries. Hope you are all following me. Yeah, one of the most obvious technique in this poem, small scale reflections on a great house, is that alliteration. Especially when you go to second year, you have to do a literary analysis, okay, critical analysis of a poem, practical criticism. There you have to write. So you have to pay attention on all these literary things, and how has to be um, one has to understand the poem or poetic techniques. So it occurs the literary alliteration. It occurs when words are used in succession or at least appear close together and begin with the same letter. For example, in the second stanza, he uses the word lost log, and which appears twice. And in the 17th line, there is another example with for fines, and another in line, I think the 20th line with long lines again. So these are only a few of the many within the poem where he has used alliteration. And another technique here which was used very effectively is enjambment. And this occurs when the line is cut off before its natural stopping point. And it forces a reader down to the next line and the next abruptly, quickly. And one is forced to move forward in order to comfortably resolve a phrase or sentence. Example exists throughout the poem, such as at the end of the line always. Okay, and if you want me to, let us move on to the detailed analysis of the poem. As I have already mentioned that this is a poem of 91 lines, quite a lengthy poem. Okay, yeah. And in the first section, I think lines between 1 to 7, what are the other things? And he'd start like, sometimes I think that nothing. Okay, this is how the poem begins. Sometimes I think that nothing, and other things lost long ago. So the words, it tells us, it conveys what the poet really wanted to convey. So in the first lines of this poem, the speaker begins by describing a house. This house is special. See, he says, no, sometimes I think this is special. So this house is special because everything comes into this house and nothing goes out. The speaker means this physically, emotionally, and spiritually, everything. And then he describes how things come into the house every day and lose themselves among other things. They lost themselves, and the things pile up on top of other things, and all of which came into the house at varying times, different times. And in the first few lines, time and accumulation appears to be important to the speaker. Whatever phenomena is occurring inside the house, it has been going on for a long time. So far, it seems as though the speaker is interested in talking about history, their genealogy or inheritance, specifically about that family or genealogical history and how it is built up over generations. So, next he says, lame wandering cows from nowhere, behind windows with holes in them. Now he is talking about wandering cows. Even the wandering cows, they always stop at their house. Okay, that's a great house. And how they entered into that, because that great house meant to be somewhat like a chowdhury. Okay, and it's a patronage for everyone, for the wanderers, for the wandering cows, and for the beggars, everyone. So in the next set of, in this particular section, the speaker goes on saying about, giving details about some of the things which end up inside the house. The first are wandering cows. Even this great house is has given shelter to everyone. Okay, and all of a sudden they are at the house, even wandering cows also. Well, they gave shelter to wandering cows, and it is unclear where they come from. Wandering cows, now how could be able to trace out their history or background? So the speaker describes how from within the house, girls would look out on the street and observe the female cows being impregnated by the males, like that. So it is interesting, quite interesting, that how the speaker exposes these animals by emphasizing the broad daylight, okay, of the situation. And this speaks to something untoward, not in the behavior of the cows, but in that some same behavior were to be replicated by human beings. And this is emphasized by the fact that the girls inside the house feel as though they need to hide behind windows with holes in, which means that those were the days, as Kamala Das, as I had discussed in my previous class, in yesterday's class. Kamala Das, in her poem, An Introduction, she says, no, we were girls, and the categorizers asked us to don't show your faces and don't peep through windows. The same thing even A.K. Ramanujan is saying, because when he describes that the small girls, they have to hide behind windows with the small holes in them, like that. Only through that hole only they can able to see the whole world, to watch the animals. So additionally, it is very interesting how the speaker refers to the cows as supervised by the elders. The elder member of the family are responsible for these animals, and they need to take care of these wandering cows. And then he says unread. Then he talks about library books. See, small things. He has what he wanted to describe or portray in some distinct manner. So the speaker goes on to describe a few other things and non-living things, library books. Okay, there are unread library books. This is the particular term he uses to describe this incident related to books and the attitude of the people who lived in that great house towards the book. There are unread library books which go bad very quickly, and the speaker doesn't make clear what he means by mature. He might, when we start reading this, and we think that he might not be very clear why does he mention that particular term, but it could refer to the fact that they have become overdue at the library, or that those who were initially interested in them have cast them to the side without a second thought, which means that they are very well versed in collecting books like us. How many of you have gone through all the blogs provided by your university, the study materials? How many of you? Hardly 10 to 15%. I'm talking about, of course, you have referred few blogs only when you start writing assignments. But even I do can understand at the 11th hour, we all start preparing for the exams, right? So, why I'm giving you example, because here unread library books. So the elders, they used to pick all the important books, they collect it and they store it in a library, but they don't have time to go through it, like our dear students, right? And many of you are quite brilliant, but you don't have time to go through the articles. Don't take it in a negative manner. Simply just I was giving you an example. So he talks about the unread library books and how they have a second thought. The elders, even like us, the people who live in that particular house, they don't have time to go through it, but they have time to collect the books and keep it in a library. And as the speaker says that the books in themselves, they lay maturing in the house, they turned into homes for silverfish. And these works leave little eggs in the ledgers. Specifically, the eggs appear where the library finds would be listed. So, next, he talks about dynasties, long legal words, and wedding anniversary of a god, neighbors, like that. So, in the next section, he talks about neighborhood, how the great house has a good rapport with their neighbors. This when the speaker describes that the old man's office room, and he wants to talk about the old man's office room. The action of the silverfish are further explained in this section, and the books, they nest in the library, and they have been discarded for such a long time that the creatures have been able to breed dynasties among long legal words. So this contrast strikingly with the Victorian parchment, which should have an intrinsic worth. So in the next stanza also it continues like how the speaker speaks about community and the dishes which were brought in by the neighbors. And he says particularly since Ramanujan, A.K. Ramanujan belonged to uh, he gives us a reference of a South Indian Brahmin family. Every day there will be a festival, no, some god like that. And even though there is no festival, they prepare some sweet dishes to offer to the gods Almighty. So he says that he has a reference of that, saying that the sweet dishes which were brought in by the neighborhoods to that great house, and within a single minute it will be vanished, which means there are so many people, it's somewhat like a mini hostel. great house. Okay, so many people, their grandchildren and their cousins, and later on I tell you. And once he says no, he begins with that statement saying that the people once who get into that house, they never go out. They never get out of that house. So I'll tell you. Let me tell you later. The neighbors brought in greasy sweets a few days ago for the wedding anniversary of their god. This speaks to the predominance of the Hindu religion throughout India, but also gives the spirituality act of feeding a god a feeling of the commonplace. And the dishes have been left behind as though they were dishes for any living person. And then in the next section, he talks about how the poem or the section, it begins by reiterating the fact that these dishes, along with everything else, are never going to leave the house they entered. So within few seconds, that all children, they come and attack the plate, which is filled with the greasy sweets. Then later on, he says that there are young women, and he gives reference of a young woman who lives in that great house. There are young women who enter the house from orthodox families and have to observe certain rituals. So here there are young women means daughter-in-laws. Okay, yeah, these are centered around the comings and goings of the monsoons and calendar dates. Which means, imagine young women means not only one or two, there are many. Which means, as I have already told you, that this is quite a big house, okay, that somewhat like a mini hostel. So another important aspect that can be found in association with the young women and the household are banana trees. So the leaves, and he compares like, see how the young women used to come into their houses, like how monsoons and how the calendar dates pass, no, like that. So the leaves, which have a number of uses, references like a traditional mealtime practice, including dietary restrictions, like that. Their work is to take care of the food, okay, that kitchen. Then for the first time, the next stanza, which allows something to leave the house, what is that? As soon as it exists, and it will come back again. And he again uses that particular phrase, and but it is often, quite often changed. And especially the speaker speaks about these things exciting and sometimes exiting and coming back with long bills attached. And at this point, it's very clear that what the speaker is going to talk about. And but in the beginning, how he used to make reference, especially during festival time, how they used to uh, bring or buy a hoop bale of cotton, like the hoop bales of cotton for our richer rights later made. Which means that I'm talking about a middle part of the middle section of the poem, where the poet describes. Am I audible? If you have any doubts, you can drop me a message. Hope you're all following me. Yeah, since this is afternoon sessions, I know afternoon sessions are dry. Sometimes it makes you fall sleep or doze off. That's why I have taken poem, at least make you to awake throughout the poem. Yeah, this is it's quite interesting poem, and how with a comical touch, the poet Ramanujan, he wanted to make it lively. Okay, so he is talking about festival season and how in the people who live in that great grand house, they used to order for clothes for plenty of people, right? So many people. So these are some of the items that leave the family and return proceeds processed. The cotton in particular goes off to invisible Manchesters. So they are in wholesale bundle, like they have to purchase, because many people know like that. And when it comes back, it is milled and folded. So this is a simple reference to the way it is processed within a factory. And there are different kinds of clothes in the family, kinds for a middle class alliance, and other cheap fabric, muslin, and which the speaker says is for richer knights. Okay, which means that wholesale, they have to buy clothes or purchase things in a wholesale manner, not in a retail way. So The next stanza, it speaks about letters. And in this case, as with everything else in the house, the letters have a way of finding their way back. But it is not always an easy process. And there are often markings of the letters which tell of the various twists and turns they took along the way to find their way back to the house. So, this is one of the clearest metaphors in the poem. What? That letters. And it speaks directly to the way that family members emerge from the household, enter out into the wider world, and after a time drift back to the family home again. So these people would be changed or marked or made by their experiences. So this interpretation is solidified when the speaker describes ideas and the way they behave like rumors. So these rumors come and go from their origins, twisting and changing, but eventually coming back as prodigies born to prodigal fathers. This is also a very important phrase you should remember. He uses he refers this particular phrase to the children who were born to the sons of this family who ran away once upon a time and they got married to some other women who belong to other community and they get back. So he refers this particular term to the children who born out of them. Got it? So prodigies born to prodigal fathers. He used. So these children return to their families, but only vaguely look like the people they remember. So this is a bit vague statement. Sometimes we think that, but they refer to Alexander the Great, like and his exploit, how he what invade India. So it is not specifically Alexander. The speaker is interested in talking about rather those like him. So these are the people who come to the country, take information of any variety, and bring it back to their homes. And then there are others, such as philosophers, plotters, who use the information relate to them and cite it as their own. So next he talks about beggar. Okay, so far he talked about books, wandering cows, sons of the family, daughters-in-law of the family, and the grandchildren of their family, and he refers as the prodigies born out of a prodigal sons. And now it is the term of a beggar. And a beggar once came with a violin like this he starts. So moving away from the distant history but still in the realm of storytelling, the speaker describes how a beggar came to the house and sang a prostitute song, and after hearing the tune the cook sang it repeatedly. So the beggar song, even the children, not only the children, even the elders, they have mugged up or by hearted those songs. So after leaving the tune, after hearing the tune, and after learning the tune, even the cook sang it repetitively in the backyard of the house. So there is nothing that the family can keep from becoming part of their history. So through surprising means and twists of fate objects, people, things, songs, and stories become integral pieces of a family history. Got it? Hope you're all following me. Then he talks about how the grandchildren or the prodigies born from prodigal sons, fathers. So grandchildren used to recite Sanskrit and how they have to perform their duties and how they used to assist their grandfathers or grandparents. This is very important. And perhaps in reference to the previous section or previous lines, what we had discussed so far, this talks about the prodigal sons, this particular stanza, and their progeny. The speaker describes how often um, what children of sons come back and recite Sanskrit shlokas to approving old men in order to keep their grandfathers in a good term like that. Right? These are the grandchildren who are learning the history of India and are looked upon favorably by their grandparents, because it's quite common that children they like the people, especially their grandchildren, than their parents, right? Because grandparents they they are very good at narrating stories, and children they always like the people who narrates them a story or who sing the songs to them or who make them to learn something different, new things. So additionally, and all these things, A.K. Ramanujan is veteran in bringing all those small issues and to make his poem fantastic or beautiful or very interesting and enticing. So, additionally, the speaker describes visiting uncles. Okay, and these family members come with stories to tell of the fathers who are not present. And they are anecdotes, a choice of word that should lead a reader to question the variety of the stories. Then, in the next section, we talk about, and makes reference of a copper pot from far away as a Sahara. So, as the poem begins itself till the end, the speaker describes how oftentimes water from the Ganges river is carried into the house for the dying people. So I told there is somewhat constant ceremonies, whether it's a funeral ceremony or anniversaries or some other festival. Is one or other day there will be festival or some ceremony will be some ceremony used to go on in that great house. So this is quite a common ritual performed in Brahmin families, of which the poet is a part of it. So the next stanza, it is somewhat like it little more confusing, where it refers how certain family members sometimes go to war but they come back as corpses, and they are changed, or sometimes they go as far away as the Sahara. Okay, they never returned at all, and though they come only once in a while. Then he talks about how difficult that Chatterley afternoon. I think we are in the end of the poem, last section of the poem, and there he talks about desert foxes. And what does it mean? And at the end of this poem, he says, the last section of the poem, it gives us one particular soldier was changed and explained. So that person was not by desert foxes. So suffering presumably serious injuries, which means the young men, those who belong to this great grand house, they were fighting on the border and they were murdered in the war while fighting on the border, like that. So by because of the serious injuries they died there. So another male family member also returned, but he came with a stripe on his shoulder, like that. So unfortunately for this man, he was not alive and he was brought back in a plane and a train or a military truck. And all of this occurred very efficiently. In fact, the transit of the body reached the family before the telegram notifying them of the death date. So this is how the poem starts abruptly, like how Kamalada starts her poem, and like in A.K. Ramanujan, it's common trait between them. And even this poem, A.K. Ramanujan starts abruptly and ends abruptly with the death note, like with the death of their short-lived cousins. He says like this. Sorry, short-lived short-lived husbands. He makes reference. He uses the term, and short-lived nephews. So this is the summary of the poem. Hope you understood it. And if you have any doubts in this, you can ask me. Can you hear me? Yeah, and I forgot to tell you that even in this poem, the poet talks about the daughters of the family, and he says they got married to a short-lived husbands. Okay, and he also makes reference that short-lived idiots, like that, because they come the daughters, once they get married to the particular person from other different family, and they return to this house as widows. So they always curse themselves or blame their parents because they had to get married to a short-lived idiot, like that. So if you go to the poem, definitely you are going to understand this poem because it's written in simple language. In one reading, by one reading, you can understand it. I can what assure you. Then, and let me give you a critical analysis regarding this poem. And so far, I have given you a lengthy line by line analysis of the poem. So, it has been rightly said that A.K. Ramanujan is not at all an obvious as a poet. The poet in him has to be gradually discovered. Okay, his poems may not impress the readers on the first reading itself, but a closer reading of his poems will definitely reveal their myriad hidden beauties. Okay, so Ramanujan has his own personal views on the poetic process. I think we should be on our guard while making comments on anybody's particular poetry for that sake, in the light of poets' own views on what poetry should be, right? And each poet or each writer or each novelist differs from person to person, and everybody, even all of us, we have individual differences, right? So a poet's own views on poetry are often the will of the wishes, and which mislead the unwary critics. So if Wordsworth found it necessary to append a preface to the lyrical ballads, and it only shows that the poet's lack of confidence. And T.S. Eliot, on the contrary, set a fine example in this respect, and he did not find it necessary to add any preface to his landmark poem, The Wasteland. You are going to study next year? Yeah, The Wasteland. So, in making this short commentary on Ramanujan's poem, Small Scale Reflections on a Great House, this is the best poem, and which has even it also received a lot of critical comments. In spite of it, we really, if you have a closer reading of the poem, definitely it will be very convincing, and significant details we could find, and it is a fine piece of social criticism sometimes, because the poem will assume a universal significance when the reader ponders on this enigmatic poem. And he will then recognize that the poem is an elegy on the death of human dignity and identity. So this is also one of the important concepts what A.K. Ramanujan wants to talk about or display or portray in this poem. And it is quite interesting to compare small-scale reflections with V.S. Naipaul's other masterpiece, A House for Mr. Biswas, the hero of Naples romance. Naipaul, you know, he's a very well known or well established author or novelist, and this poem can be compared to his this we say Nepal's novel. Got it, masterpiece. And actually, that because both this poem as well as his novel shares the common traits. And actually, the Great House is an overcrowded house, like the somewhat like Hanuman house in Nepal's novel. Both the houses are graveyards of human dignity and the identity, and both the literary pieces or masterpiece, we could find the quest for identity and dignity, right? So, just let me read few important lines from this poem. And just I have a small extract, and I have extracted few lines in order to make my lecture interesting. There he says, "Sons-in-law who quite forget their mothers but stay to check accounts." See, like this, he portrays sons-in-law in such manner that they might have forgotten their mothers, so they stay back at this house by checking accounts or teaching arithmetic to nieces. See how beautifully and how comically he has portrayed. That's what I told you. He is a veteran in portraying the caricatures. Caricature means uh, what designing or portraying some character in a comical way. Got it? So he says, oh, are you following? And how does he describe sons-in-law? And he says that they might have forgotten their mothers and stay back at this house by checking the accounts or teaching arithmetic. Got it? So great house is somewhat like different. uh, then they come in every day to lose themselves among other things lost long ago, among other things lost long ago. This particular thing I wanted to discuss with you. So, like Ramanujan has no communication or compunction to club together things and human beings in the list of things that come into the great house but do not go out. So, look at this bizarre list. Okay, stray cows, library books, dishes, servants, phonographs, epilepsy, sons-in-law, daughter-in-law, even daughters of the family who went back and again came back as widows, right? And among the things that go out but soon return are daughters who come back as widows and sons and nephews who come back as corpses slain in distant battlefields. So why do daughters soon return as widows? As I have told you, and he gives us the cryptic answer in the poem itself. He says that because they were married to short-lived idiots. Okay, beautiful. So this poem is more than a masterpiece or piece of criticism of an overcrowded Brahmin household of South India, as I have already told you. It has a universal significance. When human beings lose their dignity and identity, they are little better than animals or cows or dishes or bales of cotton or gadgets like phonograms. So this vision of Ramanujan conveyed through this poem exalts it to the niche reserved for the greatest poetry in world literature. Got it? Hope you got it. Got my point. So finally, I hope all of you have enjoyed this poem, right? Yeah. Do you have any doubts so that I can answer you in chat box if you have any doubts regarding this poem? Hope I am audible enough today. No network issues. What had happened in the morning? Or let me start, or let me go back to Great Expectations because you were not able to listen to the lecture due to the network problem. Okay, let me move on to Great Expectation. Just I'll in 20 minutes I'll give you a nutshell, okay, and I'll discuss the important theme. Then I'll wind up the session. Yeah, Dickens gets right to the action, as I have told you. The novel, this can be called as a what what I can say, the Buildings Roman novel, realistic novel, psychological novel, because the title itself is also very important. You may get questions like comment on the significance of the title. Okay, and this novel it is filled with many characters where the novel starts with a 7-year-old kid walks through a churchyard on a cold grey day before Christmas, visiting the graves of his parents. And he lives in the marsh area of Kent where the river Thames meets the sea. And he was an orphan boy who lives with his sister Georgina, who is 20 years older to him. Okay, he is elder to him than her husband Joe Gargrey, and he is a village blacksmith. You following me? Yeah, yeah. Now I am audible, right? And let me move. That's what I'm talking about. Uh, Now I am talking about the previous chapter or the lecture what I had delivered in this morning. Because due to some network issues, you were not able to audio or hear me. So I am repeating that. Hope you have understood the poem now. Any doubts in that poem so far? Hope you are all listening to me. Yeah, not dozing off, no, no dozing off. Good, you're all alive. You're all attentive. Yeah, thank you. And I'm moving back to Great Expectation, as I have told you. And this again, I'm giving you a summary in a nutshell manner. Suddenly, what happens? The novel begins abruptly. Suddenly, a convict with a great iron on his leg confronts Pip. Pip is a central character of the novel. The convict has escaped from the nearby prison ship called the Hulls. Those were the days the ship which used to carry the prisoners used to called as hulks. And after turning Pip upside down and finding only a piece of bread, the starving man threatens to eat his fat cheeks. That is very important because somewhere Dickens, though he is talking about serious, severe issues, in order to break the monotony, he wanted to add a little bit of comic element. So he says that if you don't get me food, so I'm going to eat your cheeks. Then, learning that Pip lives with a blacksmith, he also demands him to get him a file to open his cups and food and file. To further ensure that Pip's help, the convict tells him there is a young man with who will eat your heart and liver if you fail to return. Okay, like that he says, and Pip agrees to help him and then watches the man stumble away. So This is how the novel begins, and this is a very lengthy novel, as I have told you, but interesting. And Pip returns home, and as we know that I told you, he has a good rapport with brother-in-law than his own sister, Mrs. Joe, and she has a cane. Hope you had remembered when I told you this in this morning session, or you might not have got my point. The name of the cane which he used to beat or whip Pip is tickler. Okay, tickler, a wax tipped cane. So she always used to say, I have brought him up by hand. By hand means by whipping him. So something that gains her respect from all the neighbors and all everyone says with that you should respect your sister because she is the one who brought you up. When Pip has sometimes, though Mrs. Joe responds by pounding Joe's head against the wall and calling him a great stuck pig, then pouring tar water down both Pip's and Joe's throats. And later, sometimes later part of the novel, we also feel pity for this character. And as I have already told you, you might be thorough with important characters now. In the very beginning itself, we get introduced to the central character of the novel or the protagonist of the novel. One is Pip. Okay, second is Mrs. Joe. Then important character, Mr. Abel Magwitch, who happens to be a convict who threatens no to Pip to get file and food for him. Important character, and Mr. Joe, his brother-in-law. Main characters. So Dickens he gets right to the action. Within the first few paragraphs itself, he has introduced the main character here. And Pip conveyed that the story is being told in first person by Pip when he is older. So given the location of the story, revealed that Pip is an orphan with five dead brothers and introduced the conflict. Okay, he is an orphan boy and he is older because what? Because with five dead brothers, like that. So somewhere the Dickens gives us a description, and the way he describes is also very convincing, and how he makes things to go ups and downs, and sometimes we get confused how to go through it or how to understand it because somewhere we can see the flashback technique there. So let us move on to the character analysis, which is very important. The protagonist of the novel is Pip. I think you might have studied at your graduation level, The Great Expectation. Yeah, we do have Great Expectation now. Sure, everyone should have Great Expectation, but at the same time you should work hard, right? Then only you can able to reach your goal. Like how Pip, not only he wanted to be a gentleman, but he strived hard to reach his expectations. Yeah, let me move on to your favorite hero here, Philip, and he is the fictional character, the young orphan whose growth and development are the subject of Charles Dickens' novel *The Great Expectation*, which was published in 1816. And Pip has low esteem. He is not valued, and he does not value himself. And in the beginning, he was very shy, timid, and then. What I can say, very not self-reliable guy. But later on, when he moved to Satie's house, where he happened to meet Miss Havisham and Estella, important characters, and those those people who destroy the dream when they teach him to be ashamed of his coarse and common life, and there he realized that what kind of a life he is living with his brother-in-law and sister, and so far he was very content until and unless he entered into Satis house. He hasn't realized the difference between the lifestyle. Okay, somewhere we can say that Estella triggered him off to realize his dream and to realize his lifestyle, everything. So their influence, coupled with his low self-worth and his sister's messages about wealth and security, fuel his desires, ambitions, and snobbery. So Pip abused by his sister at home, and he is a passive personality and who fears the stronger emotions in him. But later, the fantasy world of Satis house feeds that part of him and shut from the light of the day, and there he started having great expectations in himself, and he wanted to be a gentleman, and he wanted to move away from this Kent marshes, and he wanted to live in London by acquiring some skills. This is how we could. That's what I have told you. This can be considered as a building through a novel because where we have a concept of like the education and the development in the central character. Right? Earlier he was a small boy. Then later he gets educated, and then later he move on to acquire additional skills to London. So from a small boy to a gentleman, it's a lengthy process, right? It's a long journey, and that's why we have to consider this happen to be, and this has to be the Bildungsroman, the finest example for Bildungsroman. The reader sees several of themes in the novel. One is obsession, desire, greed, guilt, ambition, wealth, and so on. Good and evil. So on. So many. So even during the worst moments, Pip managed to show some good things, and he wanted to help his friend, and he wanted to get back to Estella, though she ditched him, though she rejected his proposal when she was, and though she humiliated him in what Satis house, right, where she was living with Miss Havisham. So somewhere we could find that at the end of the novel, he realizes that more than money or status or social status or gentlemanship, the loyalty, dignity, and compassion is very important. The next character, which is very important, is Joe Gargery. And he is the closest thing in the story to a totally good character, and he is a hardworking boy, honorable, loyal, very sweet, and very kind towards Pip. And only on him, Pip used to rely on because he had a very strong, tough sister who always used to whip him with that cane tickler. So Dickens keeps him from being a sickening, sweet person by giving him the flaws of no education, no polished, no failing to better protect, but better to protect Pip from his sister when Pip was a child. Then comes another character, Magwitch, because due to we don't have time to go in detail because I need to cover so many other things in next classes. I'll end with describing important characters here. In my next class, I'll take up another novel by Emma, okay, or some other novel. Let me see. And other important character is Abel Magwitch, and he is a young man, and he who whom we meet at the very beginning of the novel as a convict, right? But he works out, and later he becomes a benefactor of Pip, and he's the one who supports him to become a gentleman, and he sponsors him, and where Pip wanted to settle or where Pip wanted to go and acquire some skills. And he loves Pip with a simple heart, and having had a chance to return to the basic tenderness that was always with him, and he wanted to make Pip as a gentleman. And then comes the very important character, Estella. Okay, Estella is an orphan and a victim because both had surrogate mothers, like Pip, where Pip has her sister, his own sister, has been what humiliating her. Here, Estella is Havisham. So both had surrogate mothers who thought they were doing the right things. So both are used by their surrogate parents, like Estella by Miss Havisham and Pip by Magwitch on the other hand, to exact or to avenge on people or avenge the society. So both share a somewhat passive approach to life that she alludes to when she says that they are both unable to follow their own free path, but they have to do their by instructed by their what caretakers. So she is an honest character, not evil, and is what she was trained to be. And she cannot love Pip or Miss Havisham because she was not taught love. And she says so quite honestly in the novel, she says, I was not taught to love anyone. because Miss Havisham made her to, and she prepared her or molds her like to avenge men. Because Miss Havisham herself was ditched by a man, she wanted to take that revenge through this lady. So she adopted this child and she brings her up in such a way that she hates men. Okay, like that. And there is no manipulation, only frankness. And she also, Estella also knows or shows a sort of loyalty to Pip when she tells him that she will toy with all men but him. Okay, and there is an acknowledgement that she knows Pip loves her, she cannot love him, and therefore she will not be with a man who will realize that she has nothing to give him. So, yet underneath this rigid, unemotional surface is the passion and emotional fury of her parents, Molly and Magwitch. Molly is also a very minor character. Magwitch. Later, we learn that in the course of the novel that she is the actual daughter of Abel Magwitch, whom we get introduced in the very first chapter, and who happens to be the benefactor of whom? Pip. Got it. So the one time she responds to Pip and he displays rare aggression and forcefulness in the beating the pale young gentleman. And there is deep within her something that responds to emotional fury. That is the part that is changed and softened by the abuse Drummle hands her in their marriage. And she gets married to Drummle and later he dies after a few years of their married life, and she returned to that Satie's house as a widow. And at the end of the novel, as I told you in the beginning, this novel has two endings, two conclusions. One is the real conclusion, and other one is the latest conclusion. And first, it had a what not a happy ending, and both of them they part each other. But the later, only Charles Dickens' friend Edward advised him to end this novel with a happy ending. Then he make he amends the latest part, the conclusion part of the novel, by making by reuniting both Estella and Pip. Then comes other minor characters, Jaggers and Wemmick. They are two more father figures who teach Pip how to be a man. One is a lawyer. Jaggers, he is a hardworking, self-made man who is direct, true to fact, and a good man in his own way. And seeing the horrors of prison and abuse of children by the legal system, he takes in Molly and finds a home for Estella. And another character is Wemmick. He is a transition character, a little of Joe and of Jaggers. And he is true to fact in the office, and he is an assistant to that advocate. Got it? This is very important. And how there are many uh, important characters. What I have so far, I have discussed the major characters, and minor characters also important. But you have to go through our notes, what what is given by our university. Please be thorough with the study materials and give a first reading. Definitely, you are going to understand. Then here we have a description of children and the 19th century England, and how the Industrial Revolution in early 19th century England, which started about 100 years later in the United States, made things worse, and how laborers were in greater demand than ever, and mines, factories, and shops needed help, and even orphanages and even parents would give their children to the owners of the cotton mills. Okay, these are the things that Charles Dickens wanted to portray or shows off. Okay, and at the same time, the coal mines, the factories, the chimneys, they how children were made to work or made to toil from morning till evening. Just I will give you some important lines, like from the novel. I always treated as if I had insisted on being born in opposition to the dictates of reason, religion, and morality, and against the arguments of my best friend. This is where that somewhere we feel that it might be the own words of Dickens. Okay, and in the little world in which children have their existence, whosoever brings them up, there is nothing so finely perceived and so finely felt as injustice. Okay, this is somewhere. See, Charles Dickens is a great master, and he knows how to. You know, portray or how to create a character. Very interesting. And in all of his novels, he portray children as heroes. Got it. And this is very important, and you might be enjoying, or definitely when you go through it, definitely you are going to enjoy the character of Pip and other characters associated with Pip. And though Estella, she is completely relying on Miss Havisham, even she also, somewhere we feel that maybe she is also a genuine character, and she was just a puppet in the hands of Miss Havisham. Thank you. Hope you all understood, and hope I have given justice to the text what I had taken so far. Thank you one and all. And if you have any doubts, you can drop me a message. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
Good afternoon, dear learners, dear students. I welcome you again for this post-lunch session between 3 to 4. It's my class. And as I was teaching in the morning session, I was teaching The Rape of the Log by Alexander Pope. And we were almost in the fag end of the poem. So are you all back? You okay? You're there? Are you listening me? Yes, good afternoon, Sanjay. Okay, let me get back to my explanation that the rape of the log. So we were almost in the fag end of the poem. We were in Canto 5, and where we almost approaching that how Telestrius and Ambriel, they take a revenge against this Lord Baron. So we were in that time, and the entire scenario is very much clear by now. That Belinda, she lost her chastity, she lost her lock, and she is in a deep agony. She's completely in the state of melancholy. Melancholy in the sense one is utterly disappointed and dejected everything because she thinks that she lost her chastity. But whereas Lord Baron, he thinks that he's a conqueror. He's a conqueror. He successfully vanquished, defeated Belinda. Okay, because n number of time, though she proposed, she proposed. He proposed n number of time, and she wasn't able to accept his love proposal. And after all, the things took place. But now, coming back to this Telestial. So we know that Umbriel had been to the cave of spleen, where she had to go down to collect a bag full of the whale full of the anger, temper, and all that. She come forward and she brought back the whale, the bag, the container. What all she took along with her? She collected the kind of the flame, the anger, and the words, whatnot, all that, and she has brought back. She has come with, and she informs to Sir Plume that consider the whole episode much magnified from the trivial. When the Telestrius approached her brother Sir Plume to make a reconcile with the Lord Baron and go and collect the log and hand it over to Belinda. And the Sir Plume thinks that the whole incident is a very trifle. You've been magnifying the whole situation. You've been making a mountain out of a molehill. Unknown the situation. Sir Plume consider the whole episode much magnified from the little. So he laughs at it. That's a trivial incident. He makes fun of it. But he went to demand Belinda's log. And somehow he also can't ignore the sister words. He has to obey by heart. He has to listen to her. He need to be obeyed for sister words. And he goes and he wants Baron to restore the log, return to the log, reclaim. He wants that to be retained. And Lord Peter refused to give up his prize. because you won it with a lots of Homeric struggle. Remember, had been to Hampton Court, and while they were playing the card game called Omber, it's a Spanish card game, and the moment she bent her head down to take a sip of cup of coffee, and suddenly he cuts a lock and he restores it, and he does not want to return it anymore. Why? Because he struggled to get the lock. He struggled hard to get that, so he's not at all returning it back. And what does he say? So okay, yes sir, ready to go in centuries, sir. Okay, so we are in 17th century. Sorry for the little interruption. So we are ready to go to the 17th century. And what happened? Sir Plum considered the whole episode as a trivial, and he requested Lord Baron to return it, and he did not return it. He doesn't want to return it because for him it's a valuable thing. And what happened? The next, Umbriel broke the veil containing human sorrows and all kind of evil things. So Umbriel, the bag, the veil which he had brought, he tries to open the container, and what does it happen further? The Belinda was almost drowned in tears. Belinda, she's screaming, crying, sobbing literally, and she's in the world of utter devastation. And the Umbriel, he came and poured down the entire container and the Belinda's head, and she became even more angry. But now it gives her lots of substance or sustain to keep her angry even more. How does she sustain her angry even more? Because of the power the Umbriel had provided by going to the cave of spleen and getting all the kind of a power. And now what happened? She regretted the day she had entered the society. I should not have gone to this society. Why did I go? I should not have gone to the entire Hampton Court. She screamed. And also the day she had earned to play Omber. I should not have learned to play this Omber. Nan Hampton Court hogbardagittu. Nan I should not have learned this Spanish card game Omber. She longed for a simple country life. I could have been a little village belle, little girl. On the she screams like that. She did not want to be an aristocracy woman. So now she literally, yonders. Literally, she, craves for to be a country woman, country girl, country life now. And suddenly she remembered too late that the Ariel had warned her of the impending evil and unwilling to return to the lock. Remember, Ariel told in the beginning once, beware of all and most beware of men. You're going to have something befall on your part. The dreadful will is going to happen. And the Ariel elder kuda, he did a mistake. And Ariel, after all, could not do anything. It simply vanished. Ariel is simply went. Ariel went. And what happened? Too late that the Ariel has warned her, but the impending evil and unwilling to return the lock. So what happened? And there is a one quotation I must read from the text. The quotation is such that, how does she screams? Look at the lines. I just want to read the lines from the text. Wonderful lines. You need to quote the lines for your exam point of view when you consider this as a mock epic. Okay, this is almost towards the battleground, and she screams. How does he say that? Restore the lock, return my lock. She cries, and all round, restore the lock. The moment she restored the lock, the entire Hampton Court echoes, reverberates. The whole voice of her, Belinda's words have been echoed the entire Hampton Court. It is completely echoing. Restore the lock, she cries, and all around restore the lock. The altar roofs rebounds. The voice touches the ground, touches to the wall, and rebounds again. Not fears Othello in a loud strain. Not even Othello in a loud strain. Othello kuda, the king, Shakespearean character, Othello, the king, the husband of Desdemona. So Othello, not even Othello has had a loud of a strain, wrote for the handkerchief that caused his pain. Because that he has given a handkerchief to Desdemona as a token of love and affection. When the handkerchief has been lost, stolen by somebody else and give it to somebody, and that's the only witness for Othello to understand that she still loves her husband, Othello, Desdemona. and he expect the wife should return to the handkerchief. Desdemona, return my handkerchief. Even Othello had not even wrote such a way. Othello ಕೂಡ ಡೆಸ್ಟಿಮೋನ ಹತ್ರ ಕೇಳಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ರಿಟರ್ನ್ ಮೈ ಹ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ಕರ್ಚೀಫ್ ತೋರ್ಸೋದ ಪ್ರೂಫ್ ಅಂತ ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ ಕೂಡ ಅಷ್ಟು ಮಟ್ಟಿಗೆ ಅವ್ನು ಕಿರ್ಚಿರ್ಲಿಲ್ವಂತೆ. Not even a sound, not even a roar voice of Othello. And whereas the words of Lady Belinda, the moment he screams, the whole Hampton court, it echoes. So this is the road for the handkerchief that causes pain. So this is a kind of mere comparisons. Alexander Pope, he draws an analogy from 15th century's Shakespearean Elizabethan play, the Othello. And he gives an example here. So now everything is done. And what happens now? Lord Peter was still an adamant. Lord Peter, he was a very, very adamant. He's a very, very adamant. He's a stubborn man. He's not at all to be ready to listen to anyone. You're getting my story. Will you just drop me a message? Are you able to follow it? Chaitra Shivaraju. Are anybody able to follow me here? Are you listening to me? Yes. Okay. Yes. Just drop me a message while going through, because I always make sure that we are going hand in hand in a parallel mode. So what happened? Lord Peter was still an adamant, and the Clarissa, another lady of Belinda's circle, wondered at the vanity of women, and even the women to women, even the women like Clarissa, and she's also thinks that kind of a vanity of a woman. The kind of a conceitness, adamant, it's even still there in a woman. And being a woman, she's also even accepted the kind of a vanity of a woman, because such is a attitude of Belinda here. And she also tells that the foolishness of men as well, because she is here as a what I told you in the morning, Clarissa. She's there to talk about the follies, the gaieties, the misconduct of both the men and women. She is here to just reconcile the problem, situation, subdue the problem, to mitigate the issue. Santaisuantadu, the kind of a complacency should be expected from her. And then the Clarissa felt both men and women, they need a good sense. Both the men and women, they need a good sense. And what happens? By now, Telestress gathered her forces to battle with Belinda's enemies. Because Baron is adamant, he's not ready to give it back to the lock again, and it's a time for them to meet them in a war, to a battleground. And let's see how the battle starts between them. And Clarissa and the Lord Peter, and Ambriel was delighted by this Homeric struggle. Ambriel, because he has to be so happy, because he had been to Cave of Spleen to bring all kind of power, isn't it? Because of the power given to Belinda, she's ready to fight against him, isn't it? He's ready to fight against him. And Ambriel was so delighted by this Homeric struggle. I'm very happy anta Ambriel illi helodana ನಾವು ಗಮನಿಸ್ತೀವಿ. Then what happens? Belinda pounced upon Lord Peter. So the quarrel starts, the battle starts. So they are confronted each other one after another. Here is a Belinda and here is Lord Baron. So they're ready to quarrel each other. They're ready for Homeric struggle. The war is going to take place between them. Okay. Then what happened? Belinda pounced upon Lord Peter. She pounced upon him. Was subdued with a pinch of snuff, caused him to sneeze violently. And the weapon that she uses, ladies' weapons. The lady, because I told you this is a very trivial subject matter, Alexander Pope is laughing at the kind of a war, the kind of a epic, the battle is going to take place here. It's a mock epic, not in a grand narrative style, not war between men and the typical conventional war. It is a kind of a mock heroic situation, isn't it? So what happened? So who was subdued when a pinch of snuff caused him so sneeze violently? She uses a snuff. Snuff andre ಒಂದು tobacco powder ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, tobacco neshe, what do you say in Kannada? Neshe. She uses a snuff, the tobacco powder, and she pounced upon Lord Peter, and the moment the snuff gets into his nostrils, and he violently sneezes, and this is the weapon that she uses. There is no spear between one another. She uses a snuff powder and to take a revenge against this man. And now she's demanding for the lock. He's demanding for the lock, but it could not be found. But where is the lock? That is a big question. Where is the lock? Lock is not found anywhere. Then where is the lock? because the Lord Peter, he possesses that the lock as his own victory, a symbol of his victory, as a signification of his victory, and at any cost he will never ever return to her, and could not be found. And some thought that it had gone to the moon, where also go love letters. Some believe that this kind of this letters, I mean this the lock has gone to the moon, and where even love letters are also go to a moon, and as a token of tender and passions. And then the lock was missing. So here the lock is completely missing. The Lord Peter, Baron, he is not ready to hand it over to Belinda at any point of time, at any cost. However, the situation prevails upon, and he is not ready to give it to the Belinda. And what happens? And he requested, and he tells that he is not at all having that. There is one word that he says, and that's all the entire problem. What does he say? He says that the muse of poetry saw it ascend to heaven and become a star. I don't have it right away. But the lock has become a star in the sky. I still believe that. Look at the sky. Somewhere in the sky, the lock has become turned into a star, the huge star, the kind of a sparkling star, which is illuminating. Look at that. So Belinda and she, this where the poem ends. That means Belinda consoles. For example, it is almost like flattering somebody else. If you say somebody else is so and so and so, with lots of fascination, lots of the kind of a narcissistic exploration or glorification somebody else, somehow they subdue it. And for example, here what happened? The Lord Baron tells that your lock has turned into a star in the sky. Look at that. Look at the sky. Look at the brightest star. That is your lock. So that's where the poem ends. So here, what I wanted to say, what is the message then? If this is the case, what is the message? What actually the Alexander Pope is trying to convey in this poem? There are two critics. They wanted to attack. They put their opinion about this poem. Let me give you two different opinions about two different critics, and then I'll wind up this poem, and I take up another very long narrative poem by Geoffrey Chaucer, that is the Prologue to the Canterbury Tales. Possible today, I try to complete it within 40 minutes, because we completed almost nearly 15 minutes or 20 minutes. Try to complete it by giving you a holistic picture. In the next classes, because there are a few more texts, novels, and Indian literature are there. So I try to complete as much as possible today the Canterbury Tales. And after this, to criticism on Rape Up the Lock. See, this is what the first remarks by a Western critic. The Western critic, Leslie Stephen ಅಂತ ಒಬ್ಬ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿ ಬರ್ತಾನೆ, ಅವನೊಂದು ಒಪಿನಿಯನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಬಗ್ಗೆ. ಏನಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ? ವಾಟ್ ಡಸ್ ಹಿ ಸೇ ಸೊ ಹಿಯರ್? See, the Pope is worth quoting in concern to this poem. Much of his work may be fairly described as rhymed prose, not in substance or tone or feeling, but only in the form of expression. This poem has some poetic beauty, some poetic expression that could be in terms of following the structurality. For example, the poem begins with a muse and ends with the kind of the message, the kind of a morality. So in that sense, the poem evinces the kind of aesthetics nuances anta heltane. It's a positive remarks. And there is another critic who says that the Pope avoided obscure private emotions and highly particular in personal experience, because this poem is completely it is an open-ending poem. So you have mentioned somebody did this line solve the problems between two families, and it is an open-ending poem. There is not proper conclusion, and he tells that it has become the star in the sky and she's happy, and that's the way the problem solves. Probably after Alexander Pope published this poem, after he published it, because I told you the John Carroll is the one, the family friend of both the families, requested Alexander Pope to write this poem, isn't it? So what happened after Alexander Pope wrote this poem? Probably after the family members read it, they also would have laughed at it. In the trivial subject matter, why were we so worried about it? That's the reason, isn't it? It is a very trivial subject matter, and it's meant for the poetic justice. the poetic truth, whether the guilty was punished or whether whether the guilty got the justice and all that. Ultimately, I think none of them are because they're all the kind of aristocracy people, those who lacked in terms of a certain the moral ethicality of the humanism, the lack of humanism we would come across. So it is an open-ending poem. Probably after they read the poem, they would have understood the message and they would also got an answer by the pricks of the conscience. Okay, hope this is left to your maturity. Okay, to accept, you also be a critic. So what happened? So you valued the universe and endeavors to give a poetic fervor. Nodi, a poetic fervor anta enide, a ತೀಕ್ಷ್ಣತೆ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಒಂದು ಸೆನ್ಶುವಸ್ನೆಸ್ ಇದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಆ ಒಂದು ಫರ್ವರ್, ಆ ಒಂದು poetic fervor, ಆ ಕಾವ್ಯ ಪ್ರೇರಣೆಯನ್ನ ಅಲೆಕ್ಸಾಂಡರ್ ಪೋಪ್ ತುಂಬಾ ಸೂಕ್ಷ್ಮವಾಗಿ ಗಣಿದಿದ್ದಾನೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. Maybe perhaps it's true, because though it is a true subject matter, but the way he metaphorically glorified the subject matter, theme and content and the message, it is absolutely yes, the lark became the star in the sky means still she keeps her virginity. And it's beyond your question is beyond comment, and let us keep it aside. And then poetic fervor to the problems of man's moral nature. So the last criticism I tell you, Pope's work is of didactic. ನೋಡಿ, ದಿಸ್ ಇಸ್ ಇಂಪಾರ್ಟೆಂಟ್. ನಿಮ್ಮ ಎಕ್ಸಾಮ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ವ್ಯೂ ಕೂಡ ಈ ಒಂದು ಪದ ನಿಮ್ಮ ಮನಸ್ಸಲ್ಲಿ ಇರಲೇಬೇಕು. ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಡೈಡಾಕ್ಟಿಕ್ ಅಂತ ಪದ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ ಬಕಟಿಕ್. ಏನಪ್ಪಾ ಅಂದ್ರೆ DIDACTIC, ಡೈಡಾಕ್ಟಿಕ್ ಅಂತ ಪದ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾನೆ. ನಿಮ್ಗೊಂದು ಡೈಡಾಕ್ಟಿಕ್ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಸಿಸಮ್ ಅಂತಾನೆ ಇದೆ, ಜುಡಿಷಿಯಸ್ ಕ್ರಿಟಿಸಿಸಮ್ ಅಂತಾನೆ ಬರುತ್ತೆ ಲಿಟರೇಚರ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ. ಯು ವಿಲ್ ಅಂಡರ್ಸ್ಟ್ಯಾಂಡ್ ದಟ್ ಇನ್ ಯುವರ್ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಇಯರ್ when you come to your final year. So what is this didactic and moral? Didactic antandre intended to teach a particular in having moral instruction as an ulterior motive. Didactic meaning ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ ಒಂದು ಅಲ್ಟೀರಿಯರ್ ಮೋಟಿವ್, ಒಂದು ಅತ್ಯಮೂಲ್ಯವಾದಂತಹ ಕೊನೆಗೆ ಪ್ರಾಬ್ಲಮ್ಗಳನ್ನ ಸಾಲ್ವ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತಹ ಒಂದು ಮೀನಿಂಗ್ ಕೊಡುತ್ತದಲ್ಲ, ಅದು ಈ ಕವಿತೆಯಲ್ಲಿದೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. See, didactic, this poem is a didactic one because it intended to teach particularly in having moral instruction as an ulterior motive. You're not supposed to make a mountain out of a molehill. On the trivial vision, grand narrative agi treat madodalla annotara. Okay, it's a didactic and moral and a satiric kind, and he's satirizing it, he's satirizing it, and he is the burlesque anta helti. He's ridiculing the whole system of the kind of bourgeois or aristocracy, aristocracy family here. And then so this is kind of a two criticism we come across, and I'll stop this poem now and I'll take up another a very interesting narrative poem. That means it's a long narrative poem, the general prologue to the Canterbury Tales. And I mean, I must tell you, this Rape of the Lock, it is for 10 marks, and hope you all have understood. And certainly you understood because you enjoyed, you have been sending messages after messages that you learned it. And now I'll get back to another very significant point, which covers the entire 14th century literary nuances. It is called as a social criticism. The poem, that is the general prologue to the Canterbury Tales of Geoffrey Chaucer. So here I must tell you two things much before I get into this poem. See, Geoffrey Chaucer, he intends to portray what he wants to portray in this poem. He wanted to bring society as it is in this poem. He wanted to portray society as it is in the poem. What is a society? The 14th century English literature. Because Geoffrey Chaucer, he's a father of English poetry, because the entire narrative poem, that is Geoffrey Chaucer, the prologue to the Canterbury Tales, it runs for n number of pages, and he introduces the all sect of society, different strata of society. So what's that? See, it intends to introduce us the four important category of society during the 14th century, those who were rampant in social hierarchy. The first hierarchy, the first division that he described is, the one is the ecclesiastical hierarchy. What is this ecclesiastical hierarchy? That means the relating to Christian church. It relates to the Christian church, a religious group of people, the clergymen. ಆ ಒಂದು ಕ್ರಿಶ್ಚಿಯನ್ ಒಂದು ಸೆಕ್ಟ್ ಅಂತ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಒಂದು ಪಂಗಡ ಅಂತ ಏನ್ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ, ಅದರ ಒಂದು 14ನೇ ಶತಮಾನದಲ್ಲಿ how it was so rampant. I mean, the kind of how it prevailed upon the religious sanctum ಅನ್ನೋ ಒಂದನ್ನ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಡಿಪಿಕ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡುತ್ತೆ. So what is that? So he want to talk about the ecclesiastical hierarchy, like monks, the friar, and the parson. They all belong to the religious group. So he wanted to project one group, that is ecclesiastical group, and another group that is a civil hierarchy. He want to project even civil hierarchy during the time of 14th century. So what's that? And here there are monks, I mean here there are knights and squares and the franklin. And after that you wanted to you wanted to portray the civil hierarchy like the knights, the square, and the franklin, and then the general category of free persons like guildsmen, the plowmen, the doctors, and merchants, and many other the different sect of society. So he wanted to bring the society as it is in his poem. So this is the important message, in this the entire the Chaucer's prologue to the Canterbury Tales. So what do you mean by prologue? What is the general prologue? General prologue is a brief introduction about each and every character. General prologue to the Canterbury Tales. What are these Canterbury Tales? What is this Canterbury? It's a place. The Canterbury Tales are collected by all the pilgrims who makes a journey, who keeps a journey towards a holy shrine, a holy place, where the Thomas Becket, the graveyard is there. Because that was the time when the death of the plague disease was so rampant. People have been affected by plague death, the black death, and the plague disease and all that. So that was the time that the people undertake a journey toward the holy shrine, Thomas Becket's holy shrine, and they feel that the god certainly cures the diseases. I want the belief irutte. I want the background endukondu bardiruvanta point. And this poem has such a background here, the Canterbury Tales. Look at that. See, Chaucer, Langland, and the Gower are the three great poets of the late 14th century. 14th century ಇದ್ದಂತ ಮೂರು ತುಂಬಾ ಟ್ರಿನಿಟಿ poets. ಒಂದು Chaucer, William Langland, Geoffrey Chaucer, William Langland, and the John Gower. ಇವರು ಮೂರು ಜನ very significant poets, like we have in romantic literature poets like Wordsworth, and we have Coleridge and John Keats. In the same way, these poets are contemporaries, and they're one another. They bring the kind of the social dynamism in their poetry too. And now let me give you a few more introductions about this text. What actually the poem is all about. See, this is the crux of the text. What is the crux? The Canterbury Tales. I hope, dear students, you all have written your assignments, provided if you're given this question for assignment, you are also familiar with this question. The text, the Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales. Let me give you a brief introduction about these characters first. I'll give you an introduction about the characters and the story, and later I'll go with the narration. Unlike other poem, the Rape of the Lock, we got a kind of a story between the two families. Hope you certainly enjoyed the poem. And now, this poem, here you understand the different kinds of people in the poem. And now, the Canterbury Tales begin in April. Thus, the journey, the Canterbury Tales starts in the month of April. They start the journey from the April. As the narrator itself is a Chaucer. The poet himself is he himself is a narrator here. So narrator, the Chaucer, begins a pilgrimage from the Tabard Inn. Tabard, Tabard, Tabard Inn, INN. Inn andre adondu hotel adu. It's a restaurant. It's a hotel. The narrator begins a pilgrimage from the Tabard Inn at Southwark to the famed Canterbury, where Sir Thomas Becket, a martyr for Christianity, is supposedly buried. I repeat the lines again. The narrator begins a pilgrimage. They start the pilgrimage. On the yatre, pilgrimage andre on the yatre. ಎಷ್ಟು ಜನ ಇರ್ತಾರೆ? There are more than 30 pilgrimages. There are 28 to 30 pilgrimages are there, and they start journey along with the narrator towards where? Towards the south, to the famed Canterbury. It's a place. And where do they start the journey? They start the journey from Tabard Hill. Why do they go into Canterbury? Because Sir Thomas Becket is a martyr. Bahutatmaru. He say, Thomas Becket, a holy person, is a saint, and he has, he's martyr for Christianity. On the Christian Dharmapaskara, he sacrificed himself. He's a great martyr for Christianity, and he's supposed to be buried. Avaranalli buried Madirtare. It's a holy place. They want to go to there to take the blessing from the, the blessing from, Thomas Becket. So this is one of the important issue that you all should keep in your mind. And then, so what happened? This is what. See, I'll give you a little introduction about how the poem begins. The poem begins like this. April, there is one famous line that April, the month, it is known for the kind of, the season is filled with lots of, the richness in terms of its, the flower and whatever. So the people believe that taking a journey, taking a pilgrimage during that time, it is always the good. It's always a blessed time. So, and then they started a journey and during at that time. And what happens further? Let me get into some lines from the text so that you will understand even more. So what happens? See, so April month is considered as a spring season. April, it is spring was really important to the medieval society. They think that it was a situation, probably not for Indians because this is April month and it's a lot of summer and all that. But here, so that's what they believe. Then the great shrine of Thomas Becket at Canterbury was the chief center of pilgrimage. I'm repeating this. The great shrine of Thomas Becket at Canterbury was the chief center of pilgrimage. The shrine was famous for its cures. So people believe that people get their disease will be cured. And because, for example, that's the time is a Black Death, the plague disease was so rampant, and the disease will be cured. And this is the belief. And the shrine was famous for its cures. It was custom in those days to owe a pilgrimage on recovery from the illness. The people of 14th century, they believe that in case if they go to Canterbury, their disease will be cured. They had the belief in that. And then it was a custom in those days to owe a pilgrimage on recovery from illness. So here, illness refer to the general outbreak of plague in England. So I said, so the plague, the illness antandre here, it refers to the general outbreak of plague in England, and people go to Canterbury to pay their dues to the martyr who had helped them when they were sick. So believe that in case if they go to Canterbury, their disease will be cured. And this is the belief that they had. So what happened? So all the we'll go to, we'll start we'll tell us two story from while going, and while return, we'll tell another two stories. So on the go and while going to the towards Canterbury, on the journey we will tell two stories, and while coming back we'll tell another two stories. So all the characters, they agreed to tell the stories. So this is what the Canterbury Tales. The Canterbury Tales are narrated, are told by all the pilgrimages. So who are the pilgrimages? Let me, I'll give you their name, and the name is also given in your notebook. The first, we have the knight. The knight is he's a chivalry. He's a man of chivalry. He's a wonderful horse rider. He's a very brave and widely traveled man. Who? The knight is a very brave and the chivalry and widely traveled man, and he participated in many wars. So here the general prologue antandre, I told you it's prologue. It's an introduction. Introduction to what? Introduction to every characters. And every characters ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಜೆಫ್ರಿ ಚಾಸರ್ ಒಂದು ಪೊಯಮ್ಗಳನ್ನ ರಚಿಸ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತಾನೆ. So this poem consists of almost 30 characters, and Geoffrey Chaucer, he narrates every character one after another, one after another. The first he takes up night, a night ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾನೆ. So now I just tell you what the characters, then I'll go for narration. Okay, I'll take up some few characters and I explain, because all the 30 characters cannot be explained here. So I'll tell you just 5 important characters. So first character is a knight, and next we have the squire and the yeoman, and after that we have nun, and we have monk, friar, merchant, clerk, lawyer, the franklin, guildsmen. They're the 5 guildsmen. There are 5 people. They're called guildsmen. They belong to the social and religious guild, during the time of Chaucer. And we have a cook, doctor, a wife of bath. She's a very, very important character. She's the finest portraiture in the picture gallery of Canterbury Tales of Chaucer. So what is a picture gallery? Among the 30 characters, all the 30 characters. Okay. Yes. Okay. And what happened? One of the finest portraits in this picture gallery. An example. I mean, wife of Bath. She's an excellent, cloth maker. And we have a miller, and we have the mancipal, the reeve, summoner, pardoner, and we have finally the host. Who is he? There is one person called host, and this person is a highly individualized innkeeper. He was running a hotel, the Tabardin, a housekeeper. He's the one who runs Tabardin, because all the pilgrims, they gather in this inn, right? The Tabardin. So he's the host to all the pilgrimages. He's a very merry man. He's a son of a merry-making person, a happy-go-lucky and a happiest man. A shrewd businessman. He's a very shrewd businessman, because a host is a very, very important. And please, you remember it very carefully. He's a very shrewd businessman too, and a highly diplomatic. Who? The host. And then a born leader who was readily accepted as such as all the pilgrims. And note that that this character deliberately portrayed by Geoffrey Chaucer, because he's an excellent diplomat, and he know the art craftsmanship of to read each and every individual's mind. Okay, so he's the host, and these are the characters. I have introduced you all the characters. Now, hope you're able to follow it. And let me also come back to the little brief introduction again, much before I get into the first character, knight. I'm going to explain about the knight, because knight is the first character that Geoffrey Chaucer is going to introduce us, isn't it? See, remember, I gave you an introduction. Hope you understood the introduction about the Canterbury Tales, dear learners. Yes, wonderful. If you're listening, it's fine. It's a little social criticism. So far you enjoyed and learned a story. Now it's a social criticism, and the kind of eclectic and religious and kind of issues are more to do with this poem. And certainly, you will see, when you're listening to me, you take down some points, because this poem is such that, and where it expects each and every one of you to be a very vigilant and take down some important lines from in my explanations. So Geoffrey Chaucer was most famous for his book, that is the Canterbury Tales. Okay, the tales told in the course of a pilgrimage to the Becket's shrine at Canterbury. The Canterbury Tales, they were told, okay, during the course of the pilgrimage towards the Becket's shrine, that's a Canterbury. And a general prologue, it is briefly describes the 30 pilgrims and introduces the framework. That's it. So here, the general prologue, Geoffrey Chaucer, he tries to introduce each and every character of the society. Nodi, the entire world ideyalla, ಆ ವರ್ಲ್ಡ್ ನಾನು ಪೋರ್ಟ್ರೇ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಈ ಒಂದು ಗ್ಯಾಲರಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಇದ್ದಾರೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಂದೆ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸ್ತಾನೆ. This is what he was going to prove it. This is what Geoffrey Chaucer want to prove it, that he's going to portray the entire world, different sect of society, people in his Canterbury Tales. He discussed the doctor, Franklin, merchant, Oxford the clerk, and priestly people, and everybody, isn't it? So what happened here? He says that a general prologue briefly describes the 30 pilgrims and introduces the framework. So here what happens, each pilgrims is to tell two tales on the way to Canterbury's and two more on the way back. I told you, two from going and while returning, two stories. The teller of the best tale will give you a free supper. It's a reward. The one who tells the finest tale will be rewarded with the finest supper at the host inn, that is at a bar inn. So this is one thing. And here there follows. So here the Chaucer himself. The Chaucer is also one among the participants here, because he's a narrator in this poem. And what happens here? And look at this work is a very remarkable. However, its integration of a framework and tales, the character established in the general prologue, are developed through linkage passages and through tales they tell, making a collection of sustained piece of social drama. The tale, they say that it collects a kind of a social drama. This is what it's a kind of an inclusive society. Inclusive society antandre, all the people there put it in an umbrella called this Canterbury, the platform, the pilgrimage. So this is one thing. And the last, and Chaucer also he also comment on some few characters, and they also talk about their traits and all that. Chaucer's comic relief seem to imply that laughter is the best way to meet the irrational vices and the ridiculous follies of men. Chaucer believes in a doctrine. The doctrine antandre, one has to be a comic reliever. You can't be so always kind of a strict narrations. When you look at some like a poem like Absalom by who is that? Absalom John Dryden. Yes, I tell you later. I've forgotten the writer. So when you read the poems like Absalom the way the writer, he portrays it with such a grand, the kind of a explanation. Probably it's an historical kind of a political poem, and you will certainly get bored because it's a lot to do with politics and histories. So here, that our character, that is our writer, the Chaucer, he uses certain comic relief because he says that laughter is the best way to meet the irrational vices. Through certain characters, he brings certain comics. It's wonderful. I just read further. And the ridiculous follies of men. Even men also, a lot of follies in there. A lot of mischiefs in there. Follies in the sense mischiefs. But he also strikes a more serious note. Man's dignity and integrity are to be valued above all else. More than follies, more than man's frivolities, and what is there, man's dignity and integrity are to be more valued. So I say that the entire prologue to the general prologue, it's an inclusive text. Okay, and now coming back to the first character, our much before I get into night, there is two more little to be said. That the Tabard Inn was situated in the southward, a little to the south of London Bridge. A London Bridge pakka on the place barutte, adedappa andre southward anteli. Aa jagadalli the Tabard Inn was situated, because this is a place where all the 30 pilgrimages are gathered to go towards the Canterbury, isn't it? The Holy Shrine. And then the number of the pilgrims is stated to be 29, including the poet himself. Yes, I told you there are 30 pilgrims, including the poet. So including the poet, there are 30 pilgrims. Okay, and Chaucer, he said, met the pilgrims at the Tabard on the evening of April 16th. On the April 16th, we all will meet in front of Tabard Inn because we have to go to the Canterbury. And they decided to start early on the 17th April, whereas we'll start on the day of 17th. 16th April again now gather agana, but 17th April we start a journey toward the Canterbury. And Geoffrey Chaucer, he tells to his fellow passengers, pilgrims. And the poet proposes to give descriptions of his fellow pilgrims, whose sort of people were there as they seem to be. So Geoffrey Chaucer, when they all gathered together, he wanted to propose give description. He wanted to propose some description about them. ಅವ್ರ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅವನು ಏನೋ ಹೇಳ್ಬೇಕಂತ ಹೊರಡ್ತಾನೆ. ಅದನ್ನ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಪಾಯಿಂಟ್ಗಳಲ್ಲಿ ಗಮನಿಸೋದು. ನಮಗೆ see in the syllabus, the tales told by the pilgrims are not prescribed. ಅವರ ಕಥೆಗಳು ಏನು ಅಂತ ನಮ್ಗೆ ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲ, ಬದಲಾಗಿ ಅವರ ಇಂಟ್ರೊಡಕ್ಷನ್ ಗಳು ಮಾತ್ರ ಗೊತ್ತಾಗುತ್ತೆ. Because that's the reason it's a general prologue to the Canterbury tales. We just got an introduction to the characters but not the tales. Tales ಗಳು ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಇದನ್ನ beginning ಅಲ್ಲೇ ಹೇಳಿದೆ, this is it's an unfinished text. Because the tales ಗಳೆಲ್ಲ ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಆಗಿಲ್ಲ, ಎಷ್ಟೋ ಟೇಲ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನ. ಸೊ ಟೇಲ್ಸ್ ಅವ್ರು ಹೇಳುವಂತ ಕಥೆಗಳನ್ನ ನಾವು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಓದಲ್ಲ, ಬದಲಾಗಿ ಅವರವರ ವ್ಯಕ್ತಿತ್ವ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಓದ್ಕೊಳ್ತಾ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ. We only learn about the individual characters. Hope you're getting my narration. Are you people following me? Just send me a message. Okay, you're able to follow it. Okay, certainly. Okay, come back to here. That he want to give a descriptions of his fellow pilgrims. What sort of people are they? What kind of people are they? And they seem to be, how they seem to be, and all that. It's a description that you wanted to give it. It is natural to proper for Chaucer to begin his description with a knight, because knight is considered as the first man in the rank. Knight, the soldier, he's given the first prominence. He's given the first dignity to be explained. So what happened? So the Chaucer begins his description with the knight. So he started his narration by telling about the knight, because he was the man of highest rank among the pilgrims. Among all the 30 people, the who get the first rank, the first, the kind of highest rank is a knight, the soldier. So he started his description by him. His son and the servant led the list. His son is also there, and few more also gather his company. And with Geoffrey Chaucer, he tells here. And let us know about the knight. So here, dear learners, I must interrupt by now that, see, there are 30 characters, and I only concentrate on the few people who represent the class. For example, I tell you a few characters like the knight, and then the prioress, because she represents the religious group, and I talk about Oxford, the clerk, because he is a student. He represents the entire Oxford experiences. And then I'll talk about the merchant, and only a few characters, because I'll not be able to explain 30 characters. You read a few more characters, and I explain only a few characters in my class. The first, talking about the knight. Knight Bagge, what does Chaucer say that? So this is what. Knight is a fine specimen of chivalry. Chivalry in the sense he's a nobleman. He is an horse rider. And he is a hero of 1,000 fights. You won 1,000 fights. He's a victorious, he's a true conqueror. Anta namge illi Geoffrey Chaucer, he begins his narration by glorifying the knight. He glorifies the knight. And he says that he's a valor is tempered. He's a very stable, a sturdy, and the valor and the stubborn kind of a person, tempered by gentleness and modesty of behavior. He's a valor. If he goes to fight, he fight with enemies. And the same way, he is a very, very gentle and a modesty and in his behavior. A very modesty in his behavior. There is a soldierly plainness in his attire, which individualizes his character. And he's a model for bravery, and model for courtesy, and model for temperament. So this is what he talks about. Knight. And he just go on explaining about the knight, and I just because he's an important character, I even more further describe about him. And according to the feudal system, knight took up arms in the service of his feudal superior, and he was bound to serve in war. The knights, he had to serve in his wartime because he can't step back. And half of the descriptions on his portraiture is devoted to the battles the knight fought. Okay, and his fighting career is very impressive, and he fought in Alexandria and Africa, because he won the battle in Alexandria and the Africa and Armenia and the Russia, in the Moorish kingdom and the Mediterranean, most of them in modern, the Christian militarisms. And he had been to all the places, and he proved that how bravery our knight was. Knight, knight. That means he's a Sainika, he's a soldier. And then And his personal qualities are like he's a love of honor, truth and courtesy, maybe traced to the medieval world of chivalric romance. So he represents the time of 14th century, how knights were there. He representing the whole, the 14th century situation. And now, there is another description. Another description is that, that he wears a kind of a coarse cloth. He's wearing a very coarse cloth, very rough cloth, and he does not bother to remove the stains of his dress. There are a lot of stains which indicate that he had been from Warfield. He had been from the Warfield. Suddenly he come from Warfield and he's joined the pilgrim people, isn't it? So what happened? He wearing a rough cloth and he does not bother to remove the stains from his dress. He doesn't even bother, and fresh from the battlefield. He just come from the battlefield and he isn't at once to perform the pilgrim without changing his attire. He's just come from a battlefield and he doesn't even mind to remove his, the cloth and wearing the new cloth. He didn't even do that. He's come from his fresh cloth and he joins the company of the people. So that's what about, knight. And next, I tell you about another important character, that is our prioress. The first is a knight, and next is a prioress. And prioress, she's a nun. She's a nun, and she is the head of the religious establishment. Did you know about the knight? Hope you understood about the knight. And now we are getting to prioress. Are you able to follow me? You can even drop me a message one after another, so that it gives me that you're on track. So parallel, we are going to understand the mutual descriptions. You can also put a message that yes, you're able to follow it. And the prioress is the head of a religious establishment. She was perhaps educated in the Benedictine nunnery. Where was she studied? Where she got her education? The prioress, she got her education. The nun, the prioress in the sense the nun, she got her education where? In a Benedictine nunnery. Subsequently, she became the lady superior of the nunnery chapel, and gradually she became the lady superior of a nunnery chapel. And this is what happens. And gradually, I can even tell a little more about. She's okay, and the prioress, she's hails from an aristocratic family. Look at this nun, the prioress, the Geoffrey Chaucer, he's explaining about all this character. He talked about the cult of militarism. He spoke about a knight, and he's talking about the priestly class. I mean the religious group. Soldier, yes, Arish, knight, a soldier, higher rank civilian. Absolutely good. As you're following it, good that you can put me a word quite often, so that it gives me a hint that you're on track, you're listening with that more vigilant and attentiveness. So the prioress, she hails from a aristocratic family, and she's good looking and fashionable. So very good looking, and she's fashionable also, and a well-shaped nose. She had a well-shaped nose, looking so beautiful, and a delicate mouth, pleasing attributes. She had a very delicate mouth, which are pleased to attribute. And a vivid account of her table mannerisms is given, and she's known for her table mannerisms. Please remember, because when you reading literature, especially the 14th century Chaucer period, and when it comes to Geoffrey Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales, which is a representative text to the entire history of world English literature. If you have not read this text, it is incomplete. This is such a very outstanding, a masterpiece, a classic text in the world of English literature. And please listen it carefully. And then what happened? Prioress, she has such a well-pleasing attributions, good lady, and she's an account of her table mannerisms. And it's a well-established, well-debated concept. When it comes to table mannerisms, everybody quotes prioress, even in the current scenario too. And he's giving, especially those who have learned literature among the literary literary world, is given next eating without dropping a single morsel. She eats food without dropping a single morsel. ಒಂದು ಅನ್ನದ ಹಗಳು ಹಾಗೆ ಬೀಳದ ಹಾಗೆ ಊಟ ಮಾಡ್ತಿರ್ತಾರೆ. ಯಾರು? The prioress. That is the most unique qualities of a prioress, the nun. What is that? Without dropping a single morsel, and drinking without staining a cup. A very dexterous use of fingers, very dexterous, smoothly tracking, and all that. And instead of fork, she will never used to use fork for any food. And here, and there is a pendant. There's a dollar that he has, and which motto, and the dollar contains words that what the engraved, the dollar will engrave a line. What is the line that she's wearing, the pendant that he's wearing? That love conquers all. Love conquers all. Yes, you're absolutely right. ಮುಂದೆ ಬರ್ತೀನಮ್ಮ. ಯಾರು ಸ್ವರ್ಣಲತಾ, ನೀವು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ದೀರಾ, she's also called Madam Egaltine. Absolutely true. I'll tell further. Okay, good that you know familiarity about the text. Wonderful. However, there's a pendant on which a motto from called "Love conquers all." On the slogan, kuda, the dollar, the pendant that she's wearing is captured. This is a, and then they are rather fanciful personal ornaments. Her love for tenderness and heart is spent on pet animals. She's a very tender heart, and she loves pet animals. And now, what you said, Sonalata Prasad said, like, the prairess adopts a fancy name on taking a religious oath. She's taking some religious practice, religious promise, oath, on a name on, her name is Madam Egaltine. Egaltine is a name, and she adopts this name. She took this name on a religious oath as a Madam Egaltine, and rather unusual for a nun. And it's quite seems to be unusual for a nun. But in spite of that, she takes this name as a Madam Egaltine and a religious token. And then, this is, and she will speak French. She knows also French a little bit. And we wonder whether Chaucer intends to present the prioress as a lady more devoted to secular refinement than a spiritual value. My God, look at the lines, how wonderfully explained. We wonder whether Chaucer intends to present the prioress as a lady of more devoted to secular. Whether she is devoted to secularism, practical, the kind of pragmatic values, or refinement than a spiritual virtue. So it's a very dichotomous. So she's more values for the secular refinement than a spiritual values, than mere preaching. And on the account, rather selectively, it is intended to say that there is a gentle irony on prioress too. The kind of mannerisms, the kind of a refinement she inbuilt in her qualities and all that. And now we have another character, important character, that is a monk. So there is a monk. Monk is a type of a worldly ecclesiastical with a commanding presence. He's a well-fed and a richly dressed, and he's a keen sportsman. I'm talking about the monk. He's a sportsman. He takes more pleasure in hunting than strictly obeying the rules of his order. He loves hunting, and he does that. And what happens? In most of the details, the monk betrays calling of medieval monastic life. He doesn't like the kind of a monastic life. The monk, the man who is to embrace this kind of life of monastic life, and somewhat he betrays by calling the medieval monastic life. Probably he may not able to keep up the values of this kind of monastic life. And I think it's a timer. I'm left with 3 minutes. I try to complete the monk. Then tomorrow I'll try to give you a few more characters and take up another important novel, that's Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. So the monastic orders were governed by certain rules laid down by their founders. There are certain rules to be followed by a monk, a monastery life. But the rule of Saint Benedict was the oldest monk. The Saint Augustine was a Benedict monk, and he advised the clergy to conform to the strict monastic life. Okay, and whereas, so here the Chaucer monk is leading to a worldly life. Whereas our monk, he's leading to the worldly life. On the prapanchikavadanta life lead ಮಾಡ್ತಿದ್ದಾನೆ. He often went to his horse wearing expensive boots. A monk is wearing with the expensive boots and riding across the estate. He enjoyed listening to the bridal jingles. He enjoys listening to the bridal jingles, which is sign of frivolous abstention. He was fond of hunting a male because he made a nice dish. My God, look at that. The monk is like fish out of water. Okay. See, this is what Chaucer describes. He was fond for hunting a mare because it made a nice dish to him. So the monk, he's a non-vegetarian. He kills the mare because it gives him a nice dish. Hunting is forbidden to the clergy men those days. A clergyman, a priestly class people, a monk. Okay, the time moves so faster while you are teaching, sir. We need more time to hear your lecture. Thank you, miss. Thank you very much. I'll meet you tomorrow. There is a last line I tell and I complete this lecture. So he was found to hunting a mare because it made a nice dish. Hunting is forbidden to the clergy by then. So here the Chaucer, therefore, harsh in the treatment of his character. So that's where the Chaucer, he became very harsh in giving a treatment, portraying this character that is a monk. So today I've taught you. In this session I gave you three characters, that is a knight, the prioress, and the monk. The rest of three characters tomorrow I tell you, and then we'll take up the novel. So good luck to you people. See you tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Again, I don't want to take up Shakespeare once again. I'll keep it for tomorrow. I already taught almost three texts from the same paper, isn't it? Like I taught Julius Caesar and The Tempest. Today morning, I discussed about The Merchant of Venice, the other play, The Merchant of Venice. So, day before yesterday, I did Paradise Lost. Uh, Today, what I do is I'll take up a different text from a different course, that is uh, Untouchable by Mulkraj Anand. You have this text in paper 5. So paper 5, that is course 5, that is Indian literature in English. You know, untouchability or untouchables who are called as untouchables. We are living in a kind of system where in India caste system do have prominence or priority. Do the society, the people in society do give priority to caste system in India, whereas America suffers with racism and entire Europe suffers with classism. In Europe you find classism, upper class, lower class, whereas in America, it is again America suffers because of racism. Whereas in India, our social system, like we have got a social system where casteism do play a prominent role in every sphere of life, isn't it? In every sphere of life. Now, I don't know how many of you are watching the serial called Mahanayaka, which appears in Zee Canada on every weekend, like on Saturdays and Sunday from 6:30 to 7:30. You'll come to know the real picture of pre-independent India. What was the kind of the caste culture, the system, the prevailing social structure that was there in India, how these lower caste people were brutally ill-treated and how they were socially outcasted, isn't it? So again, what I mean to say is, casteism is nothing but casteism is nothing but it's a social stigma. It's a social stigma. It's an evil. It's an evil practice, isn't it? It's an evil practice. And to write a novel on such a theme, on such a issue, such an issue, or such a topic, that too before independence, that is in the year 1935. This novel got published in the year 1935, and during that time, this particular problem was prevailing in the social structure of India. Social structure of India. That way, the problem of untouchability is still prevalent in society, isn't it? And Mulkraj Anand, through this novel, brings to the light the sorrows and the pathos, the sufferings of the lower class society lower caste people from the higher caste, from the hands of higher caste people, no upper caste people. So, as I told you, you should keep one thing in mind that this novel got published in the year 1935. That means British British Raj or British rule was very much there in India. No, it was very much there in India. Even though British tried their best to eradicate this social stigma or social problem, but still it was there very much there in the society. But whatever the situation, we are in 21st century, and India has developed a lot, has progressed a lot, and we have entered the field of technology. We have achieved a lot in the field of space and science, isn't it? In IT sector, in every sphere of life, India has progressed a lot, but still this stigma, this problem called casteism is very much there, not only in the urban structure of India, urban society, urban areas of India, even in the rural areas of India, people are still not allowed to enter temples, to fetch water in the wells, okay, to fetch water in the wells, and they are not allowed to touch the people of the higher caste or the upper caste. You know, this problem is even today very much exists. It exists very much even today in India. So he has focused on that issue, which was prevalent, which was prevailing during during 1935, during pre-independent India. As I told you, this novel is the novelist in this novel, his intention is to expose the hypocrisy, okay, of high caste Hindus, and to arouse the sympathy for the lower caste underdogs, for the lower caste underdogs. He wants the society to have a kind of sympathy towards this lower caste underdogs. At the same time, he wanted to create that kind of awareness, that kind of he wanted to display, or he wanted to expose the hypocrisy of the upper caste people, and you should not forget that Mulkraj Anand himself was a man from higher caste community. He was a Brahmin. He himself was a Brahmin. He lived part of his again life in India, and later on he moved to England. By staying in England, he was able to recall the social fabric of India, the social fabric of India through this novel, social fabric of 1930s India, 1930s India. And as I told you, again, Mulkraj Anand has given few prominent works to English literature. One of the another important novel by the same author, that is Mulkraj Anand, is Coolie, which again which got published in the year 1936. Coolie, and Across the Black Waters, another important work which got published in 1940, sorry. And there is another novel titled The Village, which got published in the year 1939. He has also written a short story. He has also written a short story uh, uh, called the Barbers Trade Union. The Barbers Trade Union. It's a short story which was there which is there for UG students, which is prescribed for our UG students. The Barbers Trade Union, another important piece of work by Mulkraj Anand. It's a short story, so you can see that untouchability, as I told you, is a deep rooted social malaise. It's a deep rooted social malaise in Indian society. It's a deep rooted social malaise. MALICIE, malaise. MALICC, sorry, MALIC, malaise. So means it's a social malaise. Means there is a hypocrisy. There is so this. It is a social malaise, and so again, Mulkraj Anand, as a writer, he is like G.B. Shaw or Charles Dickens. G.B. Shaw, Charles Dickens, and other prominent writers. They are considered as the social critics. They expose such social problems that existed in their society, in their contemporary societies, in their piece of works. Mulkraj Anand is considered as the Charles Dickens of Indian English literature, because both Mulkraj Anand and Charles Dickens exposed some of the social problems that were prevailing during their time. So in that way, you can easily call him as Charles Dickens of Indian English literature. Apart from Charles Dickens, there are a few other writers like G.B. Shaw, Oliver Goldsmith. Okay, these writers focused on the social issues, social problems like poverty, unemployment, child labor, okay, child marriage. Okay, so these issues, they focused on such issues. That is the reason why these works of such writers became very popular, because literature should always, a literarian, a prominent and a serious literarian will always focus on the things or the issues which are very much which are very much very much prevailing in the society at this present juncture. So your work or piece of work should reflect the problems of the society that you are facing. Means then only a piece of work can become can achieve that popularity, or reach the mass, Means a piece of work, any literary piece of work should always focus on issues which are prevailing in the society, which are very much prominent in the society. We should expose the problems that are prevailing in the society at this juncture. I read The White Tiger probably 2 years back. Even in that book, the White Tiger, Arvind Hadika focuses on the same problem, the huge disparity between the rich and poor. So what kind of disparity you see between the rich and poor, and what are the things that poor people do to maintain that equality, to reach it's every individual has got a specific goal, isn't it? To achieve something in life. So Abhi Tadika in White Tiger again his focus is about the huge disparity between rich and poor that is prevailing in India, isn't it? Most of the people from the poor class, poor strata of society, lower strata of society, always try to be there, always try to achieve something big milestone, something big, isn't it? They want to achieve some bigger milestones, isn't it? They want to reach the top. They want to be considered as the equal partners in the society, isn't it? So each and every one of us. That is the reason why people give a lot of importance to education. The reason is through education you can reach, you can get rid of that inequality, isn't it? Even in this novel, the protagonist feels that he is certainly in need of education. He is certainly in need of education. Through education, they can get rid of this disparity called casteism. Disparity created by casteism. So the novel Untouchable, the title itself says like the title itself reveals the theme or the crux of the story. Untouchable. The story is about untouchables. Untouchables. It doesn't mean that you should not touch. You should touch it for the sake of exam. Don't think that it should be untouchable. You should not touch it. You should touch it for the sake of exam, to prepare yourself for the sake for exam and to get good marks, isn't it? Untouchable doesn't mean that you should not touch this book. You should touch this book. Touch this book. Untouchability means speaking about a social practice, a social problem that is prevailing in the prevailing in a third world society like India. In a third world society like India. So, as I told you, the entire events that you see, whatever the events that takes place in the protagonist's life, happens on a particular day. On a particular day, all those events are interrelated. Has got some specific message to give to the protagonist. Protagonist here, the protagonist is Baka. Baka is son of Laka. Baka is son of. It's not a comedy, okay? Don't consider it as a comedy. See, it happens in college days. Some students, they don't touch books, isn't it? That is the reason why I told you like that. That's it. So coming to the text, so this particular text, as I told you, there are 4 to 5 important characters. You know, Baka is the son of Laka. Laka is the Laka, L-A-K-H-A, Laka. He is the contractor. He is the zimedar of the scavenging, the sweepers colony. He is the contractor for all the sweepers. He is the head of the sweepers, the zimedar. And Baka is his son. And there is one more brother called Raka. Called Raka for Baka is the elder son, and he has got younger siblings. That is younger brother called Laka, L-A-K-H, sorry, R-A-K-H-A, Raka, L-A-K-H-A, Laka, his son called Baka, B-A-K-H-A, Baka. Baka has got a brother called, younger brother called Laka, and after that you have got a sister. Baka has got a sister called Soini. Soini. So this is a small micro family. It's a small family, a micro family, which is symbolic. Which is symbolic, which represents almost all the untouchables that you see. Untouchables are the people who are in large number. They are the majority. They are the majority people in India. You know, most of the people who are called as untouchables are the ones who are in large number in India. So India is a land of slums. India is a land of poor people. India is a land of so many lower caste communities who are in large number. Who are in large number. They are the ones who clean your mess, who clean your dirty things. But still, the way that they treated is the way they are treated, the kind of treatment meted out to these communities, it's simply horrifying, isn't it? It's simply horrifying. So in that way, as I told you, Baka is the son of Laka, and Baka has got a younger brother called Raka and a sister called Soi. It's a micro family. It's a micro family which is symbolic and very much representing the entire untouchable community across India. So it's very interesting. Almost all the events that takes place on that particular day is a kind of enlightenment for Baka. It's a kind of it fills in a kind of revolutionary zeal, a kind of anger. At the same time, he is very much frustrated with the kind of system he is living in. Till that day, Baka is not much aware of what is going on in the society. So whatever the events that he undergoes or faces on that particular day, those events, those incidents is enough for him to change his mindset. Because as a child in his school days, Baka never tasted this discrimination, this particular discrimination prevailing in caste-based society. Because in schools, because Baka had classmates like Ramcharan, Chotu, and Babu, and you have Burra, Chotu, Ramcharan. They were close friends. Baka never experienced this kind of discrimination in his school days. They were all made to sit together, okay, in the learning atmosphere, in a different learning atmosphere. And those friends from upper caste communities used to mingle with Baka. They used to share their food. They used to share their eatables with Baka. But Baka had never experienced all this. But at this juncture, on this particular day, when Laka is ill, Laka asks Baka to pick up his job, is to start working, to leave early for work, because Laka is not well, he is bedridden, and he cannot continue his work of cleaning the latrines or cleaning the streets of Bulandshahr. Bulandshahr is an imaginary city, which is an imaginary city, but there is a city called Bulandshahr in Uttar Pradesh. But Mulk Raj Anand, again, as I told you, Mulk Raj Anand has created a imaginary city called Bulandshahr, which is actually there, but here that Bulandshahr is different. Okay, you have two Bulandshahrs. One is in Uttar Pradesh, and another one is in Punjab. So it's a microcosm. The problem lies. It's a microcosm. It's a kind of small city, a small town, which speaks about a small town which which reflects the problems that you see across India. The problem that is experienced by Baka in that small town called Bulandshahr is pan India problem. It's a pan India problem. The problem that can be visible, that can be experienced in any part of India, because the caste system is very much there in any part of India. But Bulandshahr, as I told you, it's a tiny city, imaginary city, where this family called family of Baka lives. Baka is the protagonist, the hero of this novel. He is of 18 years. He is of 18 years, very strong, strong and able-bodied, able-bodied, the son of Laka. He is very strong, physically well-built. He is of 18 years. He is of 18 years, so he is reaching the pinnacle of maturity. Means not the pinnacle of maturity. He has entered the age of maturity, isn't it? Entered the age of maturity. 18 years means uh, able enough to think, isn't it? To think what is good and what is bad. He is able enough to think what is good and what is bad. So he is well-built, strong. He is of 18 years. Baka. So, so Laka announces, Laka says that he is going to inherit the work that Laka did for all these years, and Laka at the same time never find it so strange. The caste discrimination for Laka is not at all strange because Laka, the father of Baka, never felt anything strange in that because the reason is he had inherited a kind of most of the people, particularly in rural areas, from lower caste people, they are adjusted. They have like they have become part of this kind of system where they don't feel any kind of difference or discrimination there. The reason is since many ages they have experienced or come across with this kind of situations or circumstances. So they don't feel any discrimination or any kind of difference made by the differences made by the upper caste society. So the reason is at the same time Blacker doesn't find anything strange in the behavior of the upper caste community, in the behavior of the people of the upper caste community. Whereas Baka, who enters the again, starts to do his father's work, which he had inherited from him from his father. He starts doing that work. He feels the first glimpse of what casteism when he enters the market. When he enters the market, accidentally he touches a man, touches the body of an upper caste man who screams aloud, who screams and aloud and says that some filthy creature, a filthy creature has touched my body, and now I have to take the bath. And he screams and he calls for people's help. He calls for people's help, and people chase Baka on that particular incident. The first incident that he comes across or faces on that particular day is again with the incident of where he touches the body of a man from upper caste, So the next incident is the incident where he tries to enter the temple and finds the priest of the temple, Pandit Kalinath, molesting his sister Sohini. Sohini was asked by Kalinath to fetch some water to clean the temple premises. But when she goes inside inside the temple, he tries to physically molest her or physically assault her, and she starts screaming. She runs. She comes out of that temple and she starts screaming for help. And whereas this Pandit Kalinath rewrites the entire story, he changes the mode of his action. He says that it is not he who was trying to molest her, it is the girl who fell upon him and who tried to touch him. And this made him, he tries to recreate the story, and the entire community, upper caste community, who were very much present in the temple premises, start believing Pandit Kalinath's version of the story, and they do believe because he's a man from upper caste. They believe in his words, and what they do, they chase both Sohini and Baka. But Baka, is very very furious to see his daughter molested. Sorry, his sister molested by by a priest of a upper caste community. That priest, that is what it means. That is nothing but hypocrisy. It's nothing but hypocrisy of upper caste community. You can use a woman from lower caste community to satisfy your sexual urge, whereas you mean to say that you cannot touch someone from the lower caste community. You can see the hypocrisy that lies beneath when you feel like using their service, using their what work, you are all set to treat them. You are all set. You are ready to receive. You are ready to you are ready to uh, take their service. On the other hand, you don't want them to touch you. Like you can see the disparity, a kind of hypocrisy lying beneath the caste system. The caste system. At the same time, Baba feels very much what ambitious, not only ambitious. He wants to play hockey. He had a great desire to play hockey, and when this Charat Singh, the hockey coach, invites him. When he gives him a hockey stick and invites him to play with him on every evening of a day, but again, Baka is so excited because he always had or cherished the idea of playing hockey. Playing hockey, he gets the hockey stick from Charat Singh, and when he goes there to watch the hockey match, he finds a boy who was beaten by the hooligan again, group of hockey players. He was stampeded, and that particular boy from upper caste community gets injured, and he tries to help him. Who Baka tries to help that boy who got injured due to that stampede. When he tries to help him, and even in fact, he takes him to his house by giving him some proper primary medicine, primary treatment. When he takes him to his house, his mother, instead of acknowledging or instead of praising or instead of what showing a kind of courtesy towards Baka. Instead of showing any kind of courtesy towards Baka, she denounces Baka. She criticizes Baka for touching her son. For touching her son. This is another episode incident which makes Baka feel pity, which makes Baka feel pity about his caste, about himself. And in another incident, when he goes seeking for food, when he's so hungry, he goes seeking for food on every threshold. Again, when he enters landlady's house, a particular landlady's house, there the landlady is all set. She is ready to give a piece of roti to a sadhu who is not at all productive to the society. She is That sadhu is not at all productive to the society, whereas this baka, the same baka who cleans the latrines of that lady's home, is ill-treated. She throws that roti from the first floor of her house to Baka, who was standing near the gate. She throws the piece of chapati or roti, whatever it is, on his feet from the first floor of her bungalow. So, what does it convey? What does it convey? It conveys nothing other than the hypocrisy of the double standards of people. As someone quoted, double standards of the people, weakness underlying the facade of the purity. Exactly. So, she throws the piece of roti to Baka, and Baka is again dejected, discarded, or disappointed. So he doesn't know what to do. At the same time, these are the three major incidents. Another incident is Jalebi incident, where he goes to hit Jalebi and he has 8 annas earning for that particular day. So in that 8 annas, he wants to buy some jalebis. When he goes to buy jalebis, the vendor throws jalebis, the pieces of jalebis. He covers it with a piece of paper and throws it in front of him. And he says, "These are the Yes, I got the network back. There was a problem with the internet. Sorry for that. So, as I told you, all these incidents, the incident that takes place in the morning in that market, the second incident at the temple, and even Sohini, when she goes to fetch the water in the well, she was has to wait. She was has to wait, and even these incidents it's quite common in the rural setup of India, because people from downtrodden or the lower caste society might have experienced this. Even today, some parts of India, people from lower caste society are not allowed to temples, or not allowed to temples, or not allowed to enter their houses. People from upper caste community, they don't allow the lower caste people into their houses. Even they give paper glasses to drink coffee or water. They pour water from 3 to 4 feet. Okay, if they want water, they pour it, isn't it? They won't give it in glass. So this kind of social difference or discrimination is very much there. Even today, in 21st century, we are in the third decade of 21st century, which is a decade of artificial intelligence. We are moving ahead in technology, but still such social problems are very much there. So it has something to do with the profession they do. It's natural, like it's natural, because again they feel that since they do the job of cleaning these latrines or cleaning these streets or again manholes, again since they do all kind of such such menial jobs or menial works, it is natural for the upper caste people to think that they are polluted. But in this case, Baka is not at all polluted. Baka is very much clean, physically very much clean. He keeps his body clean. He is very very tidy, and it is the mind of the people of upper caste which is polluted, not Baka's physical appearance. For Baka is physically fit. He is strong, well built. At the same time, he is very very clean. Yes, he can. He is not dirty when it comes to, even though if he cleans the latrine or cleans the streets or sweeps the streets of Bulandshahr, he is not at all dirty. That is what you see in the novel. He's not at all dirty. He's very very clean. But the way he is treated in the novel makes him realize that there is disparity in society. But whereas when it comes to his friends, they are very much there. They are very much there to help him. At the same time, his close friend Ramcharan had again as a sister in the novel, with whom Baka had a crush. Baka had, had as a kind of crush or love towards Ramcharan's sister. Ramcharan's sister is naturally Ramcharan is from upper caste. He has a kind of love towards him, love towards his sister. Sorry, his sister. But unfortunately, Ramcharan's sister again ties a knot with some other guy. She is married off to some other one, some other person, some other individual, and this Baka feels dejected or disappointed, and he shares this idea with his friend Ramcharan that once upon a time he had a crush towards his sister. He loved her a lot, but Ramcharan, a man from upper caste, a boy from upper caste community, doesn't feel anything. Even though Baka says that he was in love, again he was in love with his sister, Ramcharan receives it very sportively, because Ramcharan is a boy who is educated in English medium schools, and he can make out the difference that is prevailing in the society. And naturally, the mindset would be different. So people with education, with the proper education, with little bit of knowledge, can certainly make changes in the society, isn't it? So people like Ramcharan, they don't find any difference with Baka. For him, Baka is as good friend as he was in the past. Even at that juncture, at the time of the sister's marriage, he steals some sweets and he gives those sweets to Baka, okay, to eat. So you can see the kind of friendship they cherish, the kind of. So it is easy to understand. Friends concentrate on such explaining. So, so what I mean to say is, thank you. As I told you, Baka again undergoes all such ill treatment meted out to him by the upper caste society on that particular day. So what Baka has to do now? So while walking in the street after again disappointing day, after a disappointing day, Even after doing so much of work, he was ill-treated. Even after doing so much, he didn't receive a proper kind of reception by the people. He didn't get the proper kind of reception by the people. So he was ill-treated totally by the people, and that makes him feel dejected or disappointed. So on that particular day, at the end of the day, while going back to home, he thinks about he over years he comes to know that Gandhi, the great Mahatma, has come on a visit to Bulandshahr. He is going to address the public. So there is a curiosity about Gandhi in Baka's mind. So Baka wants to meet Gandhi, so he doesn't know what to do. So what he does, like he goes there to the public gathering. He goes there to the public gathering. There he again he sees he listens to the speech of Gandhi. He finds the similarity between himself and Gandhi, because Gandhi is a naked fakir. We all know Gandhi was called as a naked fakir by the British Empire, isn't it? He was considered as a naked fakir for wearing thin clothes or the few clothes, isn't it? So Gandhi used to move across India with just dhoti and a shawl, isn't it? So in the same token, Baka feels that there is something complex, dark in complex, and Gandhi also wears very few clothes like him. And Gandhi is very, very simple. His words are very, very simple. The way he communicates with people is also simple. And Gandhi also speaks about social consciousness. So Gandhi is the one, we all know that we read in literature, again, history, we have read in the history that Gandhi tried to eradicate this caste system. He ran two important papers. That is Swaraj. Another paper is where he calls Dalits as Harijana. Gandhi is the first leader, or the first leader in the modern India to call Dalits as Harijana. Harijana means people who are close to Hari, means Vishnu. So Gandhi's way of looking at the lower caste people is brought to discussion in this novel by Mulkraj Anand. So Gandhi, in that speech on that particular day in Baka's life, speaks about, in that particular term, Bulandshahr speaks about the social consciousness, the social awareness that is needed for people of upper caste. They have to change their mindset. They have to change their mindset, their thinking level. So then only we can eradicate the caste system. That is what Gandhi says. And but though the speech was appealing, to Baka, Baka feels that it takes time. It takes time. Again, whatever Gandhi said is true. Gandhi speaks in that speech is true, but Baka knows the reality. He knows the reality that it takes time. So it takes time. Even today, it has never happened, isn't it? So even today, compare to southern states, if you visit the northern part of India, this caste system is quite visible. You can see it on broad daylight. Okay, on broad daylight, you can see the caste system, particularly in states like Uttar Pradesh and states like Bihar. If you visit the remote villages of such states, you can see this caste system is very much prevailing. It is very much there. So even in 21st century, we still see such social evil practices. Okay, across India, isn't it? So at the same time, Baka also thinks about Colonel Hutchinson's advice. Colonel Hutchinson is a Christian missionary in the novel who tries to convert people from lower communities to Christianity. There is the other option that Baka thinks about. There is another option for lower caste people to get the social equality. The social equality can be attained through conversion. So that is the reason why most of the people in remote villages of India a converting to other religions, because in Hinduism, people from lower caste community have to face a lot of discrimination even today. So it is easy to preach, it is easy to advocate or to give freebies or to give what preach in front of public. But is it happening in India? Is it easy to bring into practice? Not at all. But still, India, as I told you, the social awareness is very much required, as Gandhi advocates in his novel. And conversion is not at all the solution. Most of the people, since in post-independent India, have converted to other religions from Hinduism. The reason is again caste system. They have converted to Christianity. They have converted to Islam. The reason is caste system again. So Baka thinks about that conversion. He wants to convert himself to Christianity. So he is a little bit he is influenced by Hutchinson's words about conversion to Christianity. He feels that Christianity as a religion has given scope for forgiveness, has given scope. There is scope for people from other communities to enter Christianity, and Christianity is known for mercy, blessings, okay, mercy, worship, blessings, worship, okay, forgiveness, everything. So in that case, they can easily people from lower caste communities of Hindu religion can easily convert to Christianity. That is the other option that Baka thinks about. But the last option is very, very interesting. Is very, very interesting. Baka comes to know there is a poetic idea. It's a novel idea. It's a novel idea he has read somewhere in his school days, in his books, that in Western countries people use flush water. They use modern day. So they use modern day again techniques to flush the water to clean the latrines. So this novel idea, this new innovative idea that is very much uh, existing in Western countries is a new thing for India. So in India, this kind of flush system or modern day commodes or using technology to clean latrine pits, it's new to India, but whereas it was already there, existing in Europe at that time. He had read about it in books, Baka. So he thinks, again, he is positive about the change. He is positive about the change. He thinks that there is a bright future for people like him. He sees a bright hope, a ray of hope, a ray of new hope is visible for Bawa. Sorry, for a boy like Baka is visible for him. A ray of hope is visible for Baka. So he feels excited to think about it, that this new flushing water system, if it is introduced, people like him, again, there is no need for people like him to clean latrines or to clean the backholes or manholes, whatever you say. But even today, manual cleaning of latrines or the manholes, people are sent to clean the manholes, right? So it is there, very much there even today, but it is strictly prohibited according to Indian legal system. It is what violation of there is a legal what hurdle for it. You cannot use man scavengers to clean latrines or to clean manholes. So you have to use the modern day technologies to clean the latrines or latrine pits or even manholes. So what I mean to say here is Baka comes to the conclusion that there is a hope for him. So in future he may, because Baka is aspirant, he is very much aspirant. He wants to continue his education. He wants to continue his education. He feels that through education, through proper knowledge, through education he can get proper knowledge, and through education he can get proper job. So in that way, he want to discontinue the profession, the legacy, the kind of again inherited legacy. That the kind of he had inherited that work, menial job from his work, from his father Laka, right? So he doesn't want to continue that. For again, he doesn't want his children to to do the same kind of profession. That is the reason why he feels like continuing the studies, okay, continuing the studies, whereas in reality, Laka has different plans. Laka, his father, has different plans. He feels that if Baka continues his education, there won't be anybody to earn the bread, to earn for the livelihood of the family. So in that case, Laka advises Baka to forget the idea of continuing his studies. But on the other hand, as I told you, the novel begins with the conservative ideology, the conservative thinking of the society, the conservative thinking, the conservative ideologies, which is still prevailing in the society. But the novel ends with the scientific thinking, isn't it? With the scientific, logical thinking. He has got a solution. Mulkraj Anand has got a solution for everything. For everything, as someone said, says that holy water is sprinkled, so they take bath after again if somebody if a man from upper caste society enters a man from lower caste society seeking his help or something like that, as soon as he reaches home he takes bath, isn't it? He takes bath and they sprinkle holy water also sometimes, isn't it? These are all nothing but blind practices or blind beliefs. This is nothing but conservative thinking which you should get rid of. So, in that way, like the novel starts with the conservative mindset of the people, but at the end of the novel, you have a innovative idea introduced, innovative scientific uh, issues discussed at the end of the novel. So, in that way, Mulkraj Anand has done a tremendous job. So he is able to create a kind of social awareness through this novel. He is able to create a kind of social awareness in this novel. As I told you, untouchability is a tradition. It's a tradition. It's a tradition and conservative idea which Baka, the hero, want to amend. He wants to amend with a touch of modernity. So you can take down. Untouchability is a tradition. It's a tradition and conservative idea which the protagonist Baka, the hero of the novel, Baka, wants to amend with the touch of modernity. So what is the touch of modernity? Using modern day equipments to clean the public. Means one man cleaning another man's dirt is simply inhuman. Is simply inhuman. And the same man who wants the other man to clean his dirt and treats him as a dirt is also inhuman, isn't it? So that man is helping you out, isn't it? Is helping you out. Is cleaning your dirt, but the way you treat them, the way you and me treat them, we treat them as dirt, which is laughable. So mere enactment of law to forbid mere enactment of law or these reservations, enactment of law, certain laws on untouchability, about atrocity laws. Now, if you comment something on again on people of lower caste communities, you may face the atrocity case, isn't it? So there are strict laws, mere enactment of law to forbid this social uh, again menace, social menace. It's a taboo, as I told you, it's a social taboo or a stigma is not sufficient. So mere enforcement of law uh, is not mere enforcement of law is not enough. It's not sufficient. It's not sufficient to forbid this social menace or taboo or stigma called untouchability. The need is to rise. The need is to rise the standards of living, the standards of the living of the downtrodden society, and to change the mindset of the high caste people. So there is a requirement of two important things. One is to change what? Change the living standards of the lower caste people. So how can you change the living standards of lower caste people? By giving them equal opportunity, by following social justice, by following social justice, by allowing them to do all kind of work that we do, isn't it? All kind of work that we do. But the thing is, there has been a drastical change. Not it is not the same old days that we are. There has been a drastical change, but still there are such problems still existing in some parts of India. Not every part of India. Today I have seen people from lower caste people entering temples. They can fetch water from any borewells or any water wells, water source. There is no such restriction as it was there in the past. But the mindset of the people towards of higher caste community towards the lower caste community is still the same. This has to be changed. This has to be changed. There needs again there is a need of social awareness. Society has to change. People thinking has to change. The mindset of the mindset of the people has to change. You know, people admire Ambedkar while watching Mahanayaka. They feel pity for Dalits, the condition that was prevailing in pre-independent India, the kind of circumstances or the kind of incidents they might have come across during that time. People have pity, sympathy. They express their concern for such a kind of living. But what happens when it comes to thinking, or when it comes to practice? When it comes to practice, including you, me, we have to change, isn't it? We have to change our attitude or our thinking abilities, isn't it? So in that way, what I mean to say here is the need is to raise the standards of living, raise the standards of living of the downtrodden lower caste society, and also to change the mindset of higher caste people, upper caste people. So they need equal treatment and expect to be treated like humans. They only expect you to treat them like humans. So they want what? Equal treatment. Equal treatment. Equality motivates others to work. Equal. That is what communism speaks about. Communist manifesto, communist principles speaks. The main ideology of communism is equality. That is the reason why people from downtrodden societies, the lower caste societies, are picking up Naxalism, isn't it? That is the reason why they first did that incident that happened in Chhattisgarh. Okay, so you can see. So when they feel that there is social injustice, when they feel that there is no social equality, this is what happens. So I don't support such brutal behavior by anybody. So violence is violence. So through proper means, through proper channel, through proper method, you have to educate the mass. You have to change the mindset of the people. So Mulraj Anand, as I told you, like Bernard Shaw and Charles Dickens and Galsworthy, Oliver Goldsmith. Okay, they all even Goldsmith is known is a great playwright, isn't it? He also speaks about problems that exist in the society. They are all called as problem plays, problem novels. Okay, problem they reflected the problems that existed in the society. So Muluk Raj Anand, like G.B. Shaw or Charles Dickens or even Goldsmith, Galsworthy, okay, is Indian Galsworthy, Charles Dickens, you can say. So his intention is to change the mindset of the society. In that effort, he succeeds. In that effort, he succeeds. Baka does not want to tolerate the centuries-old social injustice with resignation and docility. With resignation and docility. Resignation and docility. He doesn't want to. Baka in this novel doesn't want to sustain or to undergo the same kind of treatment that was meted out to his ancestors. So Baka does not want to tolerate. He does not want to tolerate the centuries-old social injustice with resignation and docility. He craves for justice and respectable status. He craves as a hero, he craves for justice. He craves for justice and respectable society. so respectable status in society. So Baka represents almost all the Dalits. He represents the Dalits of India, the downtrodden, lower caste people of India. His voice is the voice of the majority. His voice is the voice of the suppressed voice. He is the voice of the suppressed voices since ages, the voices which has been suppressed since ages. So Mulk Raj Anand, through his mouthpiece, Baka is the mouthpiece of Mulk Raj Anand. He is the mouthpiece, he is the hero, he is the mouthpiece of Mulk Raj Anand. Through Baka, Mulk Raj Anand is able to give a message to the society. This novel is a novel for social cause. It is a novel for social justice. It's a novel for social equality. So thank you one and all. I hope rendered uh, a good lecture for you. Like I hope I have given justice for the allotted time. I think it is 53 minutes. So in these 53 minutes, I hope I am able to give justice to Mulkraj Anand, okay, and his ideologies about and his views about untouchability and other social stigmas. So if you still have any doubt regarding this text in the morning text, in the morning I spoke about the Merchant of Venice. I hope I have given justice for those two texts, which I taught in the morning and also in the noon, from 4 to 5. Thank you, one and all. Uh, Meet you again tomorrow with a different text and with a different topic. Uh, if you have any doubt, you can post it here in the comment box. Hmm. I hope you have understood everything. So I've seen again. I can see some comments. It's about Mulkraj Anand Sangren. It's about Sulgin. It's a double standards, weakness, underlying defected of purity. It is easy to understand and concentrate on such. So no need of changing religion, but the mindset of people. That's good. I agree with that. In all the fields, they have reservations, sir. Reservation is required until and unless uh, there is the social awareness. That's until and unless you allow people, you treat the people equally. Okay, I am not I don't say I don't say that I'm against reservation. Reservation is required for all the downtrodden society, but at the same time, reservation should not be given to those who have already used it. That is another observation because some people again use the reservations. They come up in life, they achieve everything in life, but they use the same what reservation reservation policies for the benefits of the future progeny. But the thing is, yes, there is a there is a need for continuing reservation for another 50 to 100 years. That is my personal opinion because they are also speaking about having reservations in private sector because this social practices, these social evil practices like untouchability, casteism, this is very much there in India. Until and unless you get rid of it, of such problems, until and unless you allow people from such downtrodden communities to come to the mainstream, if you don't allow them to come to the mainstream and to achieve the bigger goals, you cannot think about getting rid again. You cannot think about erasing again reservation system. Like reservation system is a necessity of it's a necessity and it's a need. It's a need of an hour. It's a need of our. It's a need of an hour and it's a need of an hour. As I told you, it is very much required. So it is very much required for another 50 to 100 years because there is a social disparity even today existing in the society. So thank you one and all. I hope uh, I hope it's enough for you. Uh, uh, Let me meet you with a different topic tomorrow. Thank you, Nandan, Nadan Sumafi Nadan. Thank you one and all. Reka, thank you very much. Um, and please with your reactions and responses. Okay. Uh, the important questions on this text, I'll try to give it on some other day because I think it's enough for today. Okay. I'll give it on some other day. Some important questions on this particular text. We'll get it on some other day. Huh? Likely questions from this novel. Rashmi, you have to wait, okay? Wait for another day. I have not because I have not made some questions for this particular test. I have not prepared. So I'll see what kind of questions may prop up in the exam. Huh? Thank you. Thank you one and all. Let's wait for questions. I think I may give it tomorrow. Huh? I'll give the questions for tomorrow okay, on this text tomorrow. Is that okay? Shall I give the questions tomorrow? If it is okay, done. Okay. See you tomorrow, Dan. Good evening. Take care. All the best.